Okay. And hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Gravity Max live stream. Today, we have a very special episode. It is going to be a live episode, but first, let's just get through the plugs, and then we can turn on the webcam. So,
Yes, this is our first, if you don't include that Aliens episode, this is our first live cam one.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to it. We are currently both in Florida. This is where Max
This
lives.
is our southern headquarters, southern base of operations. Then we have our northern base of operations and our secondary northern base of operations. So we have three venues. We are a very prestigious company. We are a transnational corporation.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. So, this video is not intended for children under 13 years
You've
old.
You've already seen it.
If you are under 13 years old, please do not watch this video, as the topics we discuss are meant for those with at least a high school level of education. If you are not 13, you will not understand the scientific topics discussed in this video. Visit the Gravity Max website, link in the description and on the screen, but that's iffy, because then you would have to retype everything. So just go to the description. I don't know, it's there just to be there. Also, follow Gravity Max on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We have some great posts. We're posting daily because Instagram was bugging, and we fixed it. And, of course, links in the description. Also, follow Sebastian on Instagram and subscribe to his YouTube channel, 128 Seconds, because some of those great videos every other Wednesday that appear on our channel, by the end of this season of Gravity Max, they will become exclusive to 128 Seconds, so you might as well just go subscribe now. And yeah, visit the Instagram. Great account.
I still have one picture on my Instagram, and for my YouTube, what I do is I just take any topic, not necessarily limited to science. In fact, the one coming out this week, this Wednesday, is relating to history. And I'm very proud of it. I put a lot of work into this one, and I think you guys are going to enjoy that. So that's basically what my channel is centered around, and feel free to check it out, and thank you for being here.
Yep. All right. And finally, A Truly Dead Rock. We're going to talk about this today because I'll introduce our topic, but I mean, you know it because of the title. But A Truly Dead Rock is available on Amazon, and the link is in the description. So you can click that, and if you want to buy the book, then you can go on Amazon and buy it. It's a science fiction book, and it's really fun, and I'm not going to give a synopsis right now because we'll be doing that later. So, yeah. So, world building. World building is the topic that we were discussing today. It is, the process of creating worlds for fictional stories. And let's just get right into it. So I'm going to, literal world building. This is our first subtopic. And I'm going to set up the camera. Yes. So, bam.
And there we are.
Hello, everyone. Once again, welcome to the Gravity Max live stream. So, yeah. Okay, so.
So Max and I both write as hobbies and maybe as professions. Max is an author because he's actually published, but I'm still just a measly writer because I just have things that are not published. But we have both of us have universes that we've created, worlds that we've built, and this is what this stream is all about.
Yep.
So you want to start us off with what literal world building is?
Sure. First, I'm just going to address the chat because I just want to say, make sure to comment throughout this video. We have our live social media desk, our social media desk right here. And so we would love to make use of it. So we have Jan McCarthy 1975 says, yes, it is time. And I agree with your excitement. The Gravity Max live stream is the highlight of everyone's weeks, I'd say. They increase happiness by 100%. Okay.
And that's a fact.
And that's a fact. So, literal world building. This is, it's literal world building. So, this is part of world building where you have to consider planets and where they are relative to their stars, how big their stars are, how fast they rotate, what their surfaces are like, land masses versus oceans. You have to consider what are the other planets in their solar system, how does that affect astronomy, calendars, mythology. Then you have to look at their moon, like what's their moon like, do they have a moon? They probably do, because we're not sure because we only have one data point, but we're pretty sure it's essential for life to appear on a planet. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you have to take into account geography and topography, the flora and the fauna. Basically, that's what you have to start with, and that's how we've organized what we have for you today.
Yep.
We go down the levels of what you need to take into account, and this is definitely where you should start.
Yeah.
Because the geography of a planet has massive impacts on the societies that live there and like the animals and the life. So if you're going to make a story in a fictional world, the first thing you need to consider is like, what does it look like? What does it have on it? What are its resources? And like, does it have a moon? It probably does.
Yeah, so the simplest case is just Earth, where you can kind of skip this step. That's kind of for me with my books, because it takes place on the moon. So I don't have to invent a moon, because there is already a moon, and that's where the story takes place. That's where
In my works, I'm not lazy, and I created a couple of new planets. Earth is still there, because Earth is OG, love your Earth. But definitely I had to take into account what kind of like resources and what do these planets actually look like. Like, are they more like rocky? Are there desert areas? How much water does it have?
Yeah, but yeah, so definitely. So the first, more chat. So yeah, so I was 1 minute late for this. Ooh, Jan McCarthy, tardiness will not be accepted. No. I've built worlds before in Minecraft.
Minecraft is a great game for your creative potential, for just playing a video game, and it's a great game.
Yeah.
So, and you could interpret literal world building, as it says above us, as like literally building an entire world.
Yep.
Like in Minecraft, when you open up your seed.
Yeah.
So, there you go.
But
also,
so world building, I was just going to say, so like some stories are just Earth in the future, Earth at some point in time. You can even have, in fantasy, you can have Earth, but everyone is like, a magician, like, or like Harry Potter or something like that. So a lot of stories kind of skip this literal world building step because they just take place on Earth. Other stories, this is like the next simplest case. I'm thinking kind of like Lord of the Rings. They have their own planet, but it's pretty much supposed to be Earth. So you've got like similar weather, similar climate types, like similar species. Yeah, and then you have the day is 23 and a half hours long, and they just call an hour, and they divide it into 24 just because it's random. Like, what are the odds? And then like they're 0.95 AU away from their sun, and their sun is 1.05 times as massive as ours. So it's pretty much just supposed to be Earth, but they don't want it to specifically be Earth because I guess they don't want to cite this happened in North America, like this happened in like South America. They just want to have their own like map. Yeah. So oftentimes the literal world building step is skipped, but when you don't skip it, when you invent a planet from scratch, what is it like? So homemade planet, no store-bought.
Yep. We're gonna take all organic planets here. So
cage-free.
We're gonna be talking about an entire plethora of different stories and how they've implemented world building, how it's been successful. Like all the ones we're talking about have been successful. It's besides mine. And we're going to be looking at how just that step of actually building your own world like enhances the story like by that much, like exponentially.
Yeah. So I guess in a little like how-to sense, right? Mm-hmm. The first thing you need to start with is a star, and the one value that matters for a star, really for any practical sense, is its mass. So how big is it? And that affects the color of the radiation that the star emits from red to blue. You see the red stars are the coldest, the blue ones are the hottest, which, blue is not cold fire. So your more massive stars will produce more ultraviolet and X-ray and gamma ray radiation, and that is dangerous to life on any planet. So those planets, you can't go much bigger than the sun. There's a whole classification. There's OBF, OBAFGKM. Those are all the stars.
Yeah.
The sun is a G star. It used to be in alphabetical order, but then they realized that 20 of them were unnecessary, and so then they didn't put it.
They should use the Star Trek one.
Yeah,
which we talked about on a different stream.
Yeah, so O stars are the biggest stars. O stars, A stars. So O B and A are pretty much uninhabitable because of all the ultraviolet radiation. At least when it comes to a naturally occurring species, you could have someone inhabit a system later through interstellar travel, but when it comes to the development of species, they're uninhabitable, both because of their radiation and because of the fact that they have shorter lifespans than our sun, because they burn hotter, and so they burn through their fuel faster, and so they have lifespans in the tens of millions of years instead of in the billions. So there would be no life there. So these blue stars would not really good. Then, on the other hand, you have your smaller stars. You have, M stars, which are your red dwarfs, K stars, which are orangey, and so your M stars, one problem with them is that since they're colder, your planet will need to get liquid water on its surface, it will have to be so close to the star that it is likely to become tidally locked. So only one side of the planet will ever show its face to the star, and the other will always be in darkness. So you just have constant permanent day, permanent night, which isn't very ideal for life. Also, a lot of red dwarf stars are considered variable stars, and that's like Proxima Centauri, the closest star to us. They are very erratic in their emissions because of just convection in the sun, in their star. So life is also unlikely there unless, again, it's interstellar travel and you've got mechanisms to prevent solar flares. So looking at stars, you have to look at K, G, and F. Those are your best bets. And so those are pretty similar to the sun. I forget the exact range.
You can put my phone on the social media.
Oh yeah, let's see. So, let's see. I will get the unable to download. I don't know.
Was it trying to download?
I have no idea. Let's see. I will look up the mass ranges because I forget them. I remember the classification though.
So while you're talking about that, if you notice my shirt, I'm wearing this is a D20 or a 20-sided die, and this is most commonly known from the game Dungeons and Dragons, which I do play, or I used to play, but I might get back into it. But what I did was I was the DM, who is basically the storyteller of the game and has to figure out what the other players go through, what challenges they encounter, who they have to face, how successful they are for any given action, and a lot of world building goes into that, because you can buy modules, and what modules are just already done stories, already done worlds, already done scenarios. But what I did was I would make my own world. I might take some inspiration from a module, but then I would go out and actually build my own scenarios and that kind of stuff. So all of this, you need to use this to write a book, but it can also just help to allow you to tell a really good story.
Yeah.
So how are those?
I've got the stats. Okay, so K through F stars have masses of 0.5 to 1.4 times the mass of the sun. So you need to have a star that's roughly that size to get a friendly solar system for life. So then the next step is based on the star size that you choose, and the 0.5 mass will be slightly more orangey, and the F mass. The 1.4 will be slightly like whiter. So what you need to do is you need to pick a distance from that star, and it has to fit within the habitable zone of that star, which is something that can be calculated. And the habitable zone, it's pretty much just the place where liquid water can exist on the surface of a planet. And if liquid water cannot exist on the surface of a planet, then according to what we know about life, life cannot evolve. If you're going for less traditional versions of life, like silicon-based life, or you're trying to have, life that uses methane as a solvent, like on Titan, even though that was F tier, you can still look at this habitable zone. If you want Earth-like life, Earth-like planets, so you have to look at the habitable zone, and that's where you place your planet. So then the distance from the sun determines the, orbital period of the planet, and that gives you your year length for your calendars. And so then what you have to do is you have to decide the mass of your planet. And the mass of your planet should be roughly Earth-like. It can't be so massive. Over 10 Earth masses makes it so that it starts collecting stray gases in the solar system, and that causes it to become a gas giant, which is not ideal, not habitable for life. And if it's too small, then a planet can't hold on to an atmosphere at all, like Mercury or like Mars, and just loses the atmosphere, and you have no life. So you need to have a moderately sized planet, so you can have one with like slightly lower gravity, one with slightly higher gravity.
Well, gravity max, you have no life.
Yep. So you decide the mass of your planet. Then you have to pick a rotation rate, and that is more flexible because 24 hours is just 24 hours because
that's how it be. What it do?
Yeah. So you can have life that's adapted to a 5-hour day, possibly, or life that's adapted to like a 140-hour day. It doesn't matter. But what happens is, if your planet's rotating too fast, then the weather patterns become severe as the Coriolis force, which is just a side effect of the planet spinning, and it is responsible for the creation of hurricanes. So you will get more severe weather with shorter day lengths. And if your day lengths are too long, then you also get severe weather from just the heat differential. Like if it takes 11 days for day to turn to night, then it will get incredibly hot by that 11th day. And once it becomes night, it'll be a huge shock to the weather, and you'll have like huge storm systems moving from hot to cold. So so you gotta consider that. And then you have to add a moon, and when you add a moon, it has to be massive enough that it can affect tides on the planet, and if it's massive enough to affect tides, then it can keep a stable axis. The planet's axis of rotation will be stable. That's what the moon does for us. It keeps our axis of rotation at roughly 23.5 degrees, and without it, it would just be all over the place. So then your moon, it has to be within the planet's Hill sphere, which the Hill sphere is the sphere of influence of the planet. If you're outside the Hill sphere, the moon will just orbit the sun, and now it's another planet. And if it's inside the Hill sphere, then it'll orbit your planet. And then that gives you your month length, and I think that's pretty much it. Your position in the habitable zone also determines your weather, your climate. You can also pick an axial tilt that determines that. You just have to look into all of those little facets.
Yeah.
And then you pick how much water to land ratios, and then you have your planet. You have a planet, and you have a logical system for months and for years, and you have reasonable climates that life can emerge, and I think that's pretty much it. Then you can add other planets in the system to have some astronomy, to have some mythology. If you look at the Greeks, the word planet comes from, I think, the Greek word for wanderer, right? No, maybe it's Latin.
Do I look Greek to you?
Yeah, I don't know. It's either Latin or Greek. That everything I would say 60% of English is just Latin and Greek.
And a little bit of German.
Then you get French a little bit too. So planets, whatever language it comes from, the word planet means wanderer, and that's because they don't just rotate with the celestial sphere, because they are orbiting the sun, so they move in the sky from night to night. So those will be significant in your sky. If you only have two planets that are visible to just like the naked eye, unaided eye, then that will change their mythology, because we have Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Those are 5 planets that can be seen without a telescope. And so it depends on your system. If you have a lot more planets that can be just viewed, then that changes things, and less also changes things. But those are more subtle aspects. So yeah, I think that's enough literal world building, unless you have any more.
I was just gonna say, like, once you take like all those factors into account and you figure out what like the weather's gonna be, like what the time system's gonna be, that doesn't mean you can't have like fun with it.
Yeah.
Because like on your planet you can just throw like random mountains, or you can randomly like throw a massive trench in the ocean. It's just you need to make sure that it all like fits together to create like a logical planet. But you can definitely have fun. You can go crazy. You can make like trees like hundreds of feet in the air, like maybe even kilometers if you're feeling rambunctious. So you can definitely have fun with this section of it. But the next few that we're gonna get to, where it starts getting really fun.
They're even more creative. The others, this section is just a lot of math and science and just astrophysics, but it can be pretty interesting. So so I'm going to change the slide to get better.
Unfortunately, we need to walk up to the computer every time we change the slide.
Yep, I need to. Okay, let me go here. Open the world building thing, and then bam. Okay. Now we can't see ourselves, but it doesn't matter.
We can check.
Yeah, we can make sure it's fine. So, now, society building.
Society building.
We live in a society.
We do. And the reason why we live in a society is because
someone built it.
Is because someone built it. Anyways, so the reason that our society is the way it is largely attributed to how our world is like built. Like people are geographically separated, like people on one continent versus another, and that can definitely have a massive effect on society. But you can also, again, throw your own interesting things in relation to the other stuff, like how humans, as humans, we celebrate every 365 days. We celebrate like New Year. A different society might not do that. They just might be like, oh, cool, like it's another year, and their year does not have to be 365 like days.
Yeah, in all likelihood it would.
Days are. Yeah. So this is where I feel like my writing is definitely heavily dependent on society building, whereas like your stuff is more like the hard science and like the technologies that come from the necessities of like the moon and stuff like that. But society building is probably one of the reasons why The Lord of the Rings is like so popular, because the dwarves and the elves and the humans and there are humans, right? I think there are.
Yeah.
It's been a bit since I read it, but and like the hobbits and like whoever Gollum is also a hobbit, so he's just skinny. So
and just
all of that it goes into how the different societies like interact with each other amongst themselves, and I feel like that's heavily attributed to why it's so successful. So what do you have to say about it?
Yeah, society building. Society building is interesting because, especially for me, it's more, as I said, technology. So it's looking at the impact of technology. If you think of the impact of smartphones, right? Just social media desk right here, and Gravimax, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Those all stem from having these supercomputers in our pockets, and it's just interesting to me the ramifications of certain technologies. One technology in particular in A Truly Dead Rock is these contact lenses that we've talked about before in a Timeline for the Future, which is our first stream. In a truly dead rock, there are these contact lenses that can project images into your eyes so that you can just, watch a YouTube video in the corner of your vision, or like work on a Google Doc in the corner of your vision. And so this impacts the society because it allows people to record anything from their own eyes without you really knowing that they're recording, because they can just, do the mental commands, and their contact lenses in their eyes will start recording. So what that does is, that's already something, this effect is already something that we see today, but the effect is that no conversation is private, because someone could just be recording it. Unless you specifically say, hey, take your contacts out, but then that's a little like saying, hey, like put your phone outside the room. Like people would be like, okay, weirdo, like what? So you end up with this situation where whenever there's any drama, everyone knows about it and everyone's talking about it. But it also means that things blow over quickly, because if every single little minutia, if every single argument between two people is recorded and just sent around the entire community, then there's so many of them that you just like say like, oh, that's crazy, and you drop it. And you're like, oh. Yeah. Which is already in effect today with 24-hour news and
128-second videos.
Yeah, with 24-hour news especially, it just makes news stories, it downplays them a lot, because you're like, oh, there were 3 murders. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, and then you hear about some more murders, and then you hear about car theft, and all that is like thrown at you. So, yeah, I feel like that's a big difference between our two works, our two main stories. Is your society is mainly based off of the technology, whereas mine is more culture, quote unquote, because I have different races of aliens. Spoiler alert, but we're gonna be talking about it later.
Yeah.
Whereas everyone in your story is hopefully human.
Yeah, they're all.
That'd be a big plot.
Some are humans that have become cyborgs and whatever.
They have those augments and modules that enhance them, and it's interesting to see the effects that supreme technology has on society, because the society of say the 1920s is way different than the society of the 2020s.
Yeah.
Largely because of technology. And I feel like that's something that I also need to take into account, because again with the 1920s and the 2020s, they both occurred on the same planet. The only thing that changed was the technologies. So I need to take into account that when I'm doing a timeline of events for the lore behind my book, I need to show a shift in society based on the technologies that arose. I feel like that's one of the best parts of your book, is you can look and see, oh, this technology caused this, and that led to that, and that led to that, and that's why the characters in this book act like this, have access to this, and know about this.
Yeah, when it comes to society, I think technology is the most reliable predictor, but there are definitely spontaneous events that are harder to deduce from just technology available, and that become a lot larger than just technology with precedent. I mean, internet culture, you could foresee a timeline where the internet is just emails, it's just all business, but it's become very not business. It's become mostly just interactions, social interactions. So those are harder to predict. So that's why I really like to use just technology, because I like to, it's more straightforward that way to have the society built on its technology. But you do also, it's a good idea to add in spontaneous things, like memes for their society, references that people in the society have, and that can be based on their condition. So people living on the moon, they would think of, for instance, they joke about the weather, because the weather in their particular colony is just always room temperature, just because that's easiest for the colony, just cheap. So society, it isn't just about technology. but it also comes from environment. It comes from the environment that a society is in, and those two factors, I think, allow you to predict and to build a fairly convincing society.
Yes. So, like I said, we're getting into the more fun ones, and this is definitely where I have the most fun because you can add, like you said, all these little like minutiaes and things based off of events. And like for example, one of the races in my stories had a robotic revolution because they were more advanced than humans. So their technology became better, and they had better AIs, and that led to androids, and androids like walking around like people, and that the androids had a revolution, and lots of people died. Lots of those aliens died. So now all those aliens are kind of, wary of artificial intelligence because that event happened, and I feel like it's a cool detail, and in the stories that we're going to talk about, there's a lot of cool details like that.
Yeah, you gotta love when you see a very precise detail, and you want to throw in a few of those because, of course, from the perspective of a narrator, if you were to just pick up and read someone's autobiography, you aren't going to get every single thing that exists in the society. This is called like iceberg like theory because 10% of an iceberg is shown above water and 90% is below the water. So you need to have your 90% or really your 100% of your details, but only 10% come out in the story because, again, like your narrator can't explain everything because that's just not how books work in the real world. So when you're writing fantasy and sci-fi, when you're writing fiction, it can't work like that either. So you do want to throw in your very precise details that show like that you put effort into the story, and people appreciate that because they feel like, I don't know, it's like they're being let in on an inside joke. They see like, oh, I get it, because like blah blah blah, and they like understand, and that makes them feel more a part of the world that you've built than just someone reading a story, which is an effect that you want to achieve.
Yeah. So I think we see that a lot in what we're gonna look at next, and like when you said that, the first one that comes to my mind is like Star Wars, because Star Wars has that massive, expansive universe. They have like comic books, shows, like movies, obviously, like the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
And when you see and this is very prevalent in the prequels, and lots of people don't like the Star Wars prequels. I don't really like the Star Wars prequels, except for Revenge of the Sith, because of like all the memes that came out of it. But the reason that a lot of memes came out of the prequels is because there were seemingly random, like, just off-the-cuff, backhanded lines in those prequels. But when you look at, like, the universe as a whole, and I'm sure our next guest is going to talk about this, but when you look at the universe as a whole, the reason why they say those lines, like, makes sense. Like, the example that was given to me by our next guest was on the Jedi Council, one of the Jedi like masters is just randomly says, "What about the droid attack on the Wookiees?" You know, and that became a meme because that was such like an offhanded line. But then you look at the lore behind it, and you find out that guy like cares about the Wookiees, and that there was an actual droid attack on the Wookiees that was really just devastating.
Yeah.
And it would make sense in that setting for him to present that because they're on a Jedi Council, essentially a political senate, and they're like talking about that issue. But it seems like just such a random line. Should you not know that? But if you like look at the lore, then like you said, it makes it feel like you're in the inside circle.
Yeah.
In the in group.
Yeah. So that's it for me. Do you have anything else? We have chat. Okay, we have KCC says, "Stop flexing on us with your finished world." Apologies, but I will not. So I think we're ready to change slides, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm gonna change slides. All right. Bam. History building. So these are
history building. This is what I alluded to earlier when I was talking about a timeline of events, because that's what history is.
That is history.
So, with history, you like I said, the way that we organize this, it builds on itself like a ladder. So, the first thing you need to look at is like the geography, where the different societies, which is the next one, where they're located. So how would they interact with each other? Would they be hostile? Would there be conflict? Because usually the only thing that people look at in history is war. So you need to look at, were there any wars, or was there major conflicts? Did something like a nuclear crisis happen, like the Cuban nuclear crisis that we had here in this timeline? Did something like that happen? How do they view different issues because of history? Have they learned from history? And what's gonna happen in the future?
Yeah, definitely. I have in my book, I have that World War III took place in 2054.
Watch out!
Watch out! Yeah, and you have different developments and historical events, and it's interesting. So you have, I think it's 2041, you have like the first human clone, and they really existed before then, but like it was scandalous. Nobody knew that they were a clone. It was just like their father was like, they're just my kid, but it was really their clone, and so then that gets revealed to everyone in 2041, and that's a very like visceral way for a technology like that to be introduced, instead of just like, a group of scientists, everything's been like, done well. The UN Ethics Committee is like, okay, you're doing it respectfully, like you're making a human clone, we give you the go-ahead, and like it's a team of scientists, a collaborative effort, and they publish their paper, and bam, that's the first human clone. Very gentle, like introduces cloning and genetic editing technologies as mostly a positive in this society. But in my world, in 2041, when someone's just like, oh yeah, this guy's been a human clone for 18 years, and look, he's a human clone. Wow. And then the guy who made the human clone, and the clone of himself, of course, he is like now an international like fugitive, because the UN is like, hey, we didn't say you could do that. And then and now it's like sensationalists, it's on all the news, it's at what everyone's talking about, and the first human clone becomes like a celebrity, both in like fame and infamy, and so then he eventually he dips out, he becomes covert, and just like he has to hide away just because of all the attention, like negative and positive. So things like that will affect a society, because if you think about that, in the next years of development for cloning, at first, there is, of course, going to be just a blatant, like a moratorium. There's going to be a reaction of, okay, this is crazy.
Not cool, bro.
We just gotta stop for like 5 years and just reconsider. But then once that's over, then you're still treading very lightly, and there might be laws on the books saying you cannot operate a company that does genetic editing for profit. And someone's like, oh, it's a non-profit. And then they're like, okay. And then they eventually get the laws passed through their just ability of being a big organization. And it eventually, becomes publicly available. But that is now a scar, a mark in the history of this world. And you have to consider its effects. So that's something that I like with history.
Yeah, history is where you can, again, as we go along, the more liberties that you get, the more fun you can have, the more you can mess around. So there, in our very first podcast episode, we looked at a timeline for the future. We looked at technologies. Well, we mainly looked at technologies.
Yeah.
We also looked at
world population, global warming,
colonization of the moon,
Yep.
Mars and Venus, the Mars.
The Mars.
Yeah. But we also had those black swan events. And black swan events are just events that you can't predict when they're going to happen, but they might happen. For example, that was the like the AI singularity, the technological singularity, which is when the point at which technology becomes so good that it can replicate and upgrade itself. So it's able to just like do that at an exponential rate. So it becomes like basically a super intelligence. That's a black swan event because we can't predict when that's going to happen. Right now, I believe scientists say, oh, it might be around 2045, but we can't really take that for like certainty. We have to take it with like
Sue's all scientists in 2045. Hey, what's up? It didn't happen. But yeah, something especially like say aliens setting down on Earth, like in your story. That would be a black swan event because that is just completely unpredictable. Just aliens, just like being like, hey guys. That's it.
What's going on? This is where those black swan events, they can really define your world. Because if you're like, oh, there was this meteor that like smacked into this highly populated city and that caused like a class war or something like that, and then your entire story is about that class war. It's all of that, and it's when you have an extended history behind something, the reader or the viewer, or even the listener, thanks to Audible.com, we're not sponsored, but it adds so much to the story because the audience can go back and look at, oh, that happened, oh, that's interesting, oh, that's why that, and that's how you build like a world / like universe, is you have all these different events in history that attribute to why the world is the way it is now.
Yeah, history really affects society and culture. I mean, you think of, for instance, like the September 11th terrorist attacks. That has lasting effects up until like in 2020.
I thought you meant the September 11th bake sale.
Yes, yeah. Exactly, no. If you look at that, the creation of the Department of Homeland Security and then the Transportation Safety Administration, those presences that are still here today and that have interesting effects on society, and what the NHS, right? What was it? The NSA.
The NSA,
a national security agency that might be spying on us. Who knows?
If you're watching NSA, check the link in the description to my channel.
Yeah, exactly. So you have all these agencies now, and basically the effect of this event in history has changed our culture, like made airplane travel a thing that's more like frightening and something that's more cautiously guarded, and it's made privacy less certain in the world. So events like that. You could also consider, like, let's see, what other events like can you think of in our history that like affect our world today, like our day-to-day lives?
Well, I would say the creation of the nuclear bomb is probably a big one, and the fact that we use the nuclear bomb because, well, as soon as we first created it and we did the Trinity tests, that's the name, right? Yeah. We did the Trinity test, which was when we tested, hey, does this thing work? Spoiler alert, it did.
It did.
And when that happened, the world, like, it was kept secret, but Russia knew because Russia had spies. So Russia knew. So Russia was like, we got to get this technology, like, now. So they were off doing that, and that changed how like Russia was operating. Then Russia got nukes, and then now China has nukes and all of that. And now during the Cold War, there was, like I said, the Cuban Missile Crisis, like I said earlier, but there was that like period of intense tension because we were able to produce these like incredibly deadly warheads that if like we launched enough of them, we could destroy the entire planet. And then when we did use them on Japan, I would say that was very history altering.
Yeah.
Both for the entire world and obviously Japan. But I would say that's another one that just comes to mind.
Yeah. Also, you mentioned the Cold War, and if you think of during the Cold War, the space race, that brought people to the moon. Yeah. And if you think of all the technologies that came about because of it, the water purifier, GPS, like, satellite imaging for maps. All of that development that came about during that period is technology that affects our society. As I said before, technology affects society greatly. So history is very instrumental in shaping a society. I guess that's your third predictor. You have technology, you have history, you have like spontaneous events, and then you just have your little details.
I think we have chat.
Oh yeah, we have chat. Okay. Missing Music says, "Look, it's a human clone. Wow."
That's basically what
That's
people
what
said,
happens.
except instead of "wow," they were like, "You're going to jail."
Yep.
Which probably would happen if some
if
guy
someone
went out and just made a clone. I would say that's also kind of history altering when they made Dolly the sheep, like the first clone ever. Was that in the 90s? I think it was in the 90s or the 2000s.
Yeah, I don't know.
It might have been the 90s. That happened, and then people were like, okay, let's look more into like genetics. And then we talked about the Chinese man who removed like the HIV from like those infants, which was like illegal because of the laws that we have on genetic modification. But basically, what he did is he successfully removed the like genes that would have given them like HIV.
He made them immune.
Yeah, he made them like kind of immune, and that was illegal. So he went to jail for that, but he did that successfully. So that kind of shows like the power behind genetics, and when he did that, like the world saw like how much like that science can like help everyone.
Yeah. So history is very important. So that's all for me. Yeah. Cool. All right. Slide space time. Character building.
My favorite. I don't know. Any of these is my. This is my favorite. Why don't you? I'm taking the lead on these.
Okay. Yeah. So character building is now you have to pick a protagonist. You have to pick their friends, their family, all the side characters, your antagonists, and this is really fun. All the character building, because you can give them their personalities, and you can give them sarcastic personalities or just like friendly personalities, genuine, and to a certain extent, characters, they should, like, people tend to be a product of, the society and the time period they're living in. So that's something to consider when character building, but character building has the most liberty, because even if you have, like, an authoritarian, like, dictatorial society, there's still going to be that one guy who's, not like that, and if you want that to be your character, that's your character. So your character doesn't have to abide by society as much. So as it's kind of like the tree of the sciences that rely on each other, like biology relying on chemistry on physics. It's kind of like your characters rely on your history and society, but that you have more liberty with it, and your history and society relies on your planet, although you have some more liberty with it. So each step of the way, it becomes less of a calculated and scientific look at things, and it becomes more of just a fun, creative, playing field,
Yeah, I believe we've chatted.
Oh, cool. Missing Music says, favorite part by far. Yep. Shoot. Yui Film says, whoa, in real life. And Missing Music, character building is so fun. Favorite part by far.
So, Max and I were discussing this earlier. We went to the beach. It was very nice. And
very relaxing.
We were talking about how we would build characters, and you said that some of your characters just turned out to be you.
Yep.
And
that's how they start.
Yeah, that's how they start, and then you improve upon them. I kind of do the exact opposite because I know I'd be a terrible character in a book. So what I do is I try and just completely take myself out of the equation, and sometimes I'll look at people I know, which you can absolutely do. I call it outsourcing. Just take someone and you're like, you have a very interesting character trait. I'm gonna make you this like warrior that has an agenda, you know.
Yeah.
And if you do stuff like that, then you can build characters, or you can just create one on a whim. Or you can take the third approach, which is you look at the society and the history that they've been placed in, and you make a logical character based on that. I feel like the stories we're going to talk about later, we have a pretty good mix of both, I would say, because in like we keep going back to Lord of the Rings. That's going to be the first one we talk about. That one I feel has both or all three, because like I don't know who J.R.R. Tolkien knew, but I'm sure that he created like the characters of Bilbo and like Frodo as like they're like hobbits, but they have very human traits, like they prefer easygoing lives, and that might be synonymous with like Tolkien, how like he just wants to chill. He's dead now, so I guess he got his wish. So he also created like the elves. Like I hate elves, just putting that out there. Worst race in the Lord of the Rings, in Skyrim, in anything. The elves in the North Pole, the elves are the worst. But the elves in Lord of the Ring act in accordance with their society, because they, as a society, all have a way that they act because of their history and because of the like other elves that they like surround themselves with. Going back to like how I do characters, I tend to do more of like giving you human traits, and then I throw you in a society, and it's how those traits like clash with the society. You can again do it the other way, where it's their traits are because of their society. I guess that's like the inverse of that, or the converse. I forget which one's the actual term. But
I don't know. There's like 5 prefixes in English that mean not, but they all mean not in a slightly different way. Which is just so weird.
Or flammable versus inflammable. They both mean flammable.
Yeah.
So if you have a massive tank of propane and it says inflammable, that doesn't mean not flammable.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, character building. I was showing you a story earlier that I had written, just the beginning of a story in 7th grade that I never really like finished. I just have it in my Google Drive. And it was pretty much just my friend group. When I was in 7th grade, all the characters, they were just, literally just, the names were ripped too. It wasn't even like I came up with different names. Like Ernest Hemingway and like The Sun Also Rises, like he changes the names of like all his friends, but it's still, he's obviously talking about them. But yeah, I just pretty much ripped it. But then I put it in this like situation of they're all in like a venture startup company trying to create portals. And so that's fun. But yeah, eventually, my stories tend to start with the protagonist just like being me, because like that's what I know to write.
Yeah.
And
it works. It works.
Yeah, and I always write in first person. Essentially, I like to call my books like fictional autobiographies, because they're all supposed to be the autobiography of the character. They're all supposed to be a memoir that this character has written in universe. And so it's easiest for me to start with just me, and I usually like to it usually stems from, for me, just in like day-to-day life when I'm just bored, I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, okay, I really don't need to be tuned in at this moment, so then I just start thinking of some random like sci-fi thing, right? So I'm like, wouldn't that be fun? And so then I write it down with like me as the character, and if I want to develop it into a story, which is what I did with A Truly Dead Rock, then I go back in later drafts and change the characters so that it's not just me, because it's like it would be a little narcissistic to have just you as the character for everything. Also, you want to add some intrigue. You don't want to have monolithic characters throughout your stories, like that would get old. So I added like changes, like I made it so that he had an older brother instead of a younger brother, like things like that. And like I made him more, I would say he's probably less talkative than I am. He's more like introspective, and I'm just trying to think. And I'm thinking right now, A Truly Dead Rock, the character Hudson, the main character. And so he's different from me, but there's probably a lot of similarities. And a lot of the things I talk about in the early section of the book, where he's still like at his school before like things go down. A lot of the stuff I talk about, if you're one of my friends, like you'll know like, oh, haha, that's a reference to that. And so that's fun. That's always fun to have in your stories because it's kind of like you can tell your friends. But on the other hand, having your stories just be you and your friends. Okay, here's the thing, right? In Ernest Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises, he throws some pretty severe shade on these people. Like this character, Mike, who is like obviously like a real person. He says, this man never pays off his debts. He's like, all his, like, he went into a pub and he was almost like beaten up and thrown out of the pub because his creditors were there. And so imagine being Mike. And this story comes out with like your buddy Ernest Hemingway just like releases this story, and you know you go to apply for a loan, and the guy's like, "Weren't you the guy in that story that never pays off his debts?"
Turns out that like
and
Ernest wrote it that way just because he forgot to like pay him back
Yep.
for like beer.
Exactly. Yeah. So you wanna. Yeah. So it's good to have references to your actual life as an author, because that's fun. It's fun to write yourself into a situation. Because a lot of my writing, I think, is just escapism. It's like this, like a lot of like just life is just kind of like a little boring, so you can spice it up with sci-fi.
We've chatted.
Oh yeah, okay. I'll address that just one moment. But yeah, so it's fun to have your own little like that's what gives your story flavor as an author. But you also want to, you also want to come up with your own things and have your characters deviate from you and your friends. So that they're like unique characters and not just people. So yes, chat. Okay, we have.
Where are we starting?
Okay, so we have UE Films. Also, Sebastian, the thing is done. Okay.
Okay, I know what thing. I'm scared.
UE Films. The main character of A Truly Dead Rock is Max, like fully Max. Okay, well I think I've denoted some pretty key differences here.
I would say that you would be more vocal about the situations that Hudson, I would say, is much more complacent than Max is. Because if you were thrown into some of the situations that Hudson was, I feel like you would have an issue. And
I'd be like,
you would be,
hold on one moment.
Yeah. I feel like you would not be as into like just, okay, man.
All right.
Chill. I feel like you would take a stand or.
Yeah. So that's whatever. Missing Music agrees. Okay. Missing Music. English is awful. It's so confusing. 3 languages stacked together in a trench coat. Very true. And then Amy Hogan. Giolito ain't ready for how good my short stories are going to be.
He is not,
this.
Amy. You got this. After you watch this, you will be able to write your own extended universe. Like, Kevin Fiji wants to know your location because you're making another Marvel universe in class.
Wow.
Because you watched this video.
Yeah, so that's cool. And then let's briefly touch on just character names. So this is a hard one. I would recommend against going on random name generator. You will get horrible names. I said this before. You'll get names like Box Braxley. or
Curtis Dyer.
Curtis Dyer, or like Chair Evanston. Like, you'll just get stupid names, so just don't even bother. What I did, and what was semi-successful for some of my characters, is that I went to Google Maps, and if I wanted a character from England, I zoomed in on England and scrolled around a bit and was like, that sounds like a good name for a character. Or if I wanted a character like from the U.S. South, I just did that. I wanted a French character. Why would I want a French character? I don't know. And then I zoomed in on that. So you do that, right? That's something that I found helpful. You can also just come up with a name. A name of someone that you know.
Earlier there was shade on me, as I have been known to go to random name generators for characters. There's some good ones.
Sometimes.
I never. I would say like only about 1 in 10 do I actually use a name I get, but it's like the sound that I like. Then I play with it. I've actually asked like people, hey, I need a name, and then they'll like give me a name, and that's very helpful. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. But it's names they can be very important because I can't think of an example right now, but there have been like stories that I've like read with like really good plot, and then the main character's name is like either John Doe or like Rikki Tikki Tavi, and like, that doesn't work for me.
Yeah. Another good source is the U.S. Census. Just has a list of the like 1,000 most common names. Don't pick like from the first 10 because then you're just gonna get Susan
or
Karen
or Emma Smith.
John.
Yeah.
So go a little bit of the way down, and you actually get some decent names that like aren't everyone's names that. So that's what I do for character names. And for my protagonist names, I have a little. For my first trilogy, I have a nice little trend that you'll see. I'm not going to say it,
Yeah.
But they are good. I think it's good.
Yeah, I think
I like
the main character's name in the third book is my favorite.
Yeah, I know. Because, like we just came up with it.
Yeah,
like,
we sat in his jacuzzi for like
in the southern base of operations jacuzzi.
Yeah, southern base
staff jacuzzi. Yeah.
We sat in there for like 4.5 hours, just like talking about like story ideas, story arcs, and we came up with a pretty baller name.
Yeah. Yeah. It was. Oh, that's. Oh, okay.
It do not matter.
Here, take the charger.
Oh my god, an act of selflessness.
Yep. So. Yeah, so that's character building. Oh, 1%. The 1% dream.
The 1% dream.
So, do you have anything else on characters?
Character building is like obviously very important for a story because I feel like especially right now when you watch TV shows, the goal of those shows is to have you relate to the characters. And believe it or not, it didn't always used to be that way. Because, like, if you look at the earliest books, like the Odyssey or like the Iliad or like whatever Leonardo da Vinci was
this is the most important person on the planet.
Yeah, it was, this person did that, and then they did that, and that's cool. That's how, like, old storytelling is. And then it shifted into, like, newer stuff where it was like, and then this person lived his life like this, and you can too. And now in the modern days, it's, hey, this character is kind of similar to you, relate with them. So Max and I both love BoJack Horseman.
Yep.
And one of the reasons that it's like very critically acclaimed is because the characters are like relatable. Like some of them are walking animals, but it's that cartoon shenanigans.
Yeah.
But you can relate to them, And that's what makes the show like really great. And you see that in a lot of shows. Like my favorite cartoon/show ever is Avatar: The Last Airbender. Most people watching this know it because like I don't shut up about it.
Yeah.
But there were some very relatable characters in there.
Yep. Yeah. And even in this like situation that's like not Earth,
Yeah. And that's what you got to shoot for when you're writing stuff in like nowadays. You gotta have traits of your characters that you can relate to, and I think that you did a very good job of that.
Thank you.
In your book, because Hudson just sometimes is like, I don't want to be in this room right now, and boy, have I thought that.
Yeah, Hudson. Oh, he's thrown into a very awkward situation about chapter 3, and it's so fun because it's like, what can you do? Yeah. Let's see. I'm gonna change slides.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
The only other chat we got was Missing Music saying haha, same to Amy's earlier.
Oh yeah. Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings, as advertised.
As advertised.
So we've already talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
But like we were saying earlier, Lord of the Rings is kind of the perfect example, one of the most well-known examples of all of the topics that we just talked about with the geography, societies, history, and like character traits. Because one thing that I love in Lord of the Rings that you don't see often nowadays is he included maps like through his books, and I think through like almost every book that he wrote, because he had the like the Hobbit trilogy, and then he wrote like the actual Lord of the Rings trilogy, and then he wrote like other stuff like the Silmarillion, which I read, and some other yeehaw books in the same universe.
Yeah.
But he would always include maps, and I love that, and I love that detail because it shows you like, oh, this society is divided from this society because there's a mountain range, and that caused them to be very like different from each other. And I actually implement that into my writing, and we're gonna get to like the bulk of it later. But there's this one alien race that lives in a binary system, and what a binary system is it's a solar system but with two suns. So the way that their solar system is set up is that they have one sun here, which is called Alis Major, and one sun here, which is called Alis Minor, because it's a little smaller, but not like that much. Alis Major has 3 planets orbiting it, and Alis Minor has like also 3 planets like mainly orbiting it, but they're like close enough together to be in like the same solar system. But like at a basic level, that's what it is. And life occurred on both those sets of 3, like obviously on one of them, and then they spread to the other 3. And those 2 societies ended up being very different from each other just because they were separated by like a planetary distance. And even though like genetically they're very similar, because the 3 planets, like the 2 sets of 3 are very similar to each other because the 2 suns are very similar to each other. So biologically and like genetically, they're, I keep saying similar to each other, but that's like the only thing I can use this to explain it. But culturally, they're very different because, and they don't really work well together. They're always like, you know, like they're just called the Alis Majors or the Alis Minors.
I always imagine the minors are like, we want to be major.
Yeah.
Why did they get to be major?
They have like contentions between them. They had a war between them, and that was all just because of a geographical barrier.
Yep.
So that's why I love that Tolkien put those maps in, because you know it helped obviously like build the universe and that kind of stuff. Going into the society thing, we touched on this earlier. Elves are different than hobbits because hobbits deserve respect, and dwarves are obviously the most superior race in the Lord of the Rings universe. If you think different, log off.
Log off.
And check out 128 seconds, where in the 128 seconds I'll explain why your point of view is wrong. But he made those societies so blatantly different because, like, dwarves and elves is the most common, you know, like
dichotomy.
Exactly. Thank you. Dwarves are more just like heavy-handed. They're like, oh, use is better than beauty, whereas elves are like, oh, beauty is better than use.
Yeah.
So they're off using glass weapons and all that stuff, whereas the dwarves are just like banging away at the forge, you know. And that's another thing. Elves live in their trees. The dwarves live in their mountains. All those different societal things. And even if you were just going to write a story with one race in the book, but it was like an alien race, then what you do is you compare and contrast that race with humanity.
Yeah.
And that's how you can get kind of some of the character traits.
Yeah.
I've spat bars for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's really interesting. It is a good story, and I especially like the fact I read The Hobbit in school, and in The Hobbit, you know, it's, you know, a large journey, and that's kind of what my book is too. It's a journey. It's kind of like the Odyssey. Like I like a lot of these tales that are centered on the characters have to venture, like they need to get somewhere. I really like that because it takes the like metaphorical development of the character, the figurative like character development, and it intertwines it with the physical development of they are moving from point A to point B. And yeah, so I really like The Hobbit, and I just think the fact when you have a traveling story, you're able to see all these different cultures. Like you're able to see the elves, you're able to see the dwarves, like you're able to see like the goblins, like the different societies in this world. And in my book, you see a ton of different cities on the moon, a ton of different lunar colonies, and I think that's what's really fun. I just think like stories that involve like a physical journey allow you to see like so much culture and so much of the society of a world.
What's was it Gulliver's Travels? Is that what I'm thinking of? Where I might be getting that name completely wrong, but I think it is Gulliver's Journey or Gulliver's Voyage.
Gulliver's Travels.
I think it is.
I think there was a movie with Jack Black.
Of course, Jack Black shows up in the most random stuff. Like literally, our guest next week could be Jack Black.
Who knows?
And no one would question
no one
it.
would bat an eye.
Jack Black just shows up in the most random of places. What was it? Gulliver's Travels, right? It's the story of the guy, presumably Gulliver, going around and to all these different societies who think they have achieved utopia. And he goes in, everything, like, he does this like 5 or 6 times. He always goes into the society, they're like, welcome to utopia. And he's like, wow. And then he stays there for like a week and a half. And then he finds out what the big issue is. You know? And then he moves on, and then he goes to the next one, and it's like, welcome to utopia, and they have a different issue. I like that because it was like his journey, and it was like he wanted to find what a utopia is, and he couldn't. And that goes into what like the word utopia means, because it means non-existent place in Greek, because it's what they're saying there is you can never achieve a utopian society, and that's what like the book is about. It's about how there's always going to be an issue in society, and they did that. The author, I don't know who the author is. The author achieved that through a physical journey, but it was also like a metaphorical search for, can we make a utopia?
Yeah, I like that idea that he gets to some place and it seems pretty perfect, except like everything's on a cob, or their favorite food is honeydew, or something.
They
like
have
that.
Taco Thursdays.
Yeah.
He leaves.
I'm out of here. Yeah, that's the best. The movie's very different. It's not about utopia and philosophy at all. It's Jack Black. It's stuck on an island of like 2-inch tall people, and they capture him, and they're like, you're a giant, like blah blah. And then they like banish him to this island where there are really like giant people, so that like the ratio of like the tiny people to Jack Black is the same as Jack Black to the like giant people, and he's like, oh no,
what a wacky situation.
Yeah, and it's such a weird movie, so it's definitely not like the book. It's funny though. If you want to laugh, then go watch that movie.
I think we've strayed enough off of Lord of the Rings, so I think we can.
Yeah. Okay.
Dune! I probably just blew out the mic.
Probably so.
So, dear viewer, if you are new here, Dune is my favorite book, right? No offense to Max. But Dune is my favorite book, you know. And I talk about it like almost every stream. If this is not your first time, you've heard me talk about Dune.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to talk about Dune. So I'll give you the plot first. So basically, this kid by the name of Paul Atreides. I know it's 8,000 years in the future, and this kid's name is still Paul. And
legendary. Yeah,
that's pretty funny. And he is the son of what's known as a like duke, and what that is because it's like so far in the future, territories have now just become entire planets. So like landowners are really just planet owners. That's what a duke is. It's just owning a lot of planets. So his dad is a pretty successful duke. He has a like a kingdom, essentially of like planets, and he has a wide reach, and they come from this planet called Caladan, and Caladan is, I think it's like 90% water, so more water than Earth. And long story short, Paul gets stranded on this desert world, like informally named Dune. The real name is Arrakis, and they're actually coming out with a Dune movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in 2021. I heard about this all the way back in 2018.
Oh, wow.
And I hit the roof. Like, I was going crazy. It's got, right now the cast list includes Jason Momoa, who's Aquaman, Josh Brolin, you know him as Thanos or Cable, and Dave Bautista, you know him as Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. So movie's looking spicy, you know what I'm saying? But basically, Paul gets stranded on this desert planet. He's from a water planet, so he needs to adapt. And what he does is he joins this like culture of people that live like outside the cities of Arrakis, that like live in the desert, in little things called like sieves, which is like just little caves basically in this desert. And he joins these people. They're called the Fremen or the Freemen. I don't know how you pronounce it because I've only ever read it. Like, you know, like in books when there's like a name.
Yeah, just buy the Audible version, just specifically for that purpose.
Hermione.
Hermione
Granger. So, Paul gets stranded there. He has to go into one of these sieves, and he meets up with the Fremen, and they basically teach them they teach him their culture, and he like learns about it, and he adapts, and then he ends up becoming like the Messiah, basically. Like, he is the Messiah, and it's such a good story because it's an incredibly expansive universe, because there's 8,000 years of history on top of the like 12,000 years of recorded human history that we have now. And it's super expansive. Another interesting thing that I talk about, I think I've talked about this the most in whenever we talk about Dune, is that the antagonists are the Harkonnens, and what the Harkonnens are, they are almost a different species, but they started as humans. So when humanity got all that technology to explore planets, to go out and colonize, like, and terraform whatever world they wanted, they like went out, and the Harkonnens just happened to go like that way, and they were like secluded, and they were in their own corner of the galaxy, and they basically like over time changed into like this more brutal, like they have like gladiator battles, and they like eat a ton, and it's like they're almost completely separate from what the other branch of humanity has become, because that has shifted more into the kingdom shift. Like I said, like his father, Paul's father, is like a duke, and he runs kind of like a kingdom, and it's like they've become like civilized and like uncivilized, and almost completely different like species, even though they both started as humans. So that's another geological thing. Just because they were removed on a planetary scale, they like changed societally, and obviously had a different history. Going into more of the like character creation, I feel like Paul is not a very relatable character, because he's like he's supposed to be this incredibly like intelligent, like he's not like the Messiah, like I said earlier. He's like the Messiah. He's the Messiah to the people on Arrakis, but he's like a prodigy child. There was like a prophecy that was like kind of about him, but there was like dilemmas whether it was actually about him or not. And he has like this weird power to predict stuff, and there's all of that. So the only thing I would strike Dune for is that Paul is not like very relatable, and I wouldn't say a lot of the characters are, but there is one very relatable line in the book, and it was because, and another reason why I love Dune so much is because I read it at like the perfect time in my life. Because I read it when I was like 12 years old, and that was like right when I was like entering, like puberty, obviously, and like all the chemicals were like hitting my brain. I was starting to go a little loopy, but the line was Paul was like reflecting on his father because like something happened to his father. He dies. The book was written in the 60s, people. So like, come on. So his father dies, and he reflects on like his childhood. And he says like, one's childhood ends once they realize that their father is made out of flesh and blood. And that was like such a like raw line for me to hear when I was like 12 years old. That was crazy, and that I wholeheartedly agree with that statement. And like that was crazy to read, and it's such an experience. There's like 5, maybe 6 if you count the last book, because that last book is kind of like an addendum to the series. There's 5 books in the main series. I wholeheartedly believe that the first one is the best one. It's incredibly long. It's 1,000 pages long. It was written by Frank Herbert in the 60s, so there's definitely influences of the Cold War and of the space race and of Vietnam and a lot of the other stuff that was going on at that time period. And it's interesting to see because, like a truly dead rock, or I would say a little different, it has all of that like calculation, and it has all of that like the timeline of technological improvements and advancements that like you have. But how it's different is that it doesn't really say any of that. Like it wholeheartedly goes with the iceberg thing. But I would say it shows like 3%. You know? Because it's like, oh, they have like ray guns and they have shields, but how they got to ray guns and shields like isn't said in the book. But it's like, there's an entire universe built around it. So yeah, as you can tell, I just talked about that for like ever.
Yeah.
So I love Dune. Movies coming. I'm pretty sure Aquaman is Jason Momoa is gonna be Paul. So
cool.
Spoiler
Yeah,
alert.
I gotta read it before the movie comes out.
Yeah, I have so many extra copies.
Yeah, I'm like, so many books.
But during my rant, we got chat.
Oh, we got chat. Okay, let's see. Where does it start? Okay, after haha scene. So, Lucia Schneering says, just in time for
Lord of the Rings.
Oh, Lord of the Rings.
Glad you can tune in.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. So then, Missing Music says, your yell scared me so bad all my life. My cat just mauled me out of fear. Elthem.
Well, I hope you're coming with your cat again.
Yeah.
Dune!
Oh, apologies. Be careful. Oh gosh, I wish I could warn you. Wait, maybe I can warn you through chat. 30-second delay.
No, the point is,
yeah,
there's no warning, and
there's
I
no
hope
warning.
your cat mauls
Oh
you
gosh. And then Lucia Schneering says, Max is just along for the ride right now. Yeah. Well, I haven't read it yet. I really want to read it. There are just so many books. I'm like,
Oh yeah, no, Max reads more than I do, and I used to read at just an avaricious, a voracious rate.
Voracious reader. Is that a Magic the Gathering card?
I think it is.
Yeah,
it is.
I love that card.
I have that card.
Yeah.
It's the
Voracious
Curious Homunculus
Yeah.
flips over to Voracious Reader.
Yeah.
That's actually my best deck.
Oh, cool.
Which is critically acclaimed. I'm so good at Magic the Gathering. But also created by Wizards of the Coast, who also created Dungeons and Dragons. But that's my spiel about Dune.
Yeah.
Do you have anything?
All right. Well, no, because I haven't read it. Yeah. Okay.
I think the next two, that's your territory.
Yeah. Okay.
So
yeah,
Max
change
is
the
making a
slide.
comeback. Most definitely.
Bam, Ringworld. Okay, this is a great one. I love this book. I read this book when I was freshman year, so last year. It was pretty cool. I forget why I
just situated there.
Yeah, I'm situated now. I forget why I read it. I don't think anyone recommended it to me. I think I was just kind of present, and I'm like, I want to read a science fiction book, but what what science fiction book shall I read? So I simply look up good science fiction books, as you do, and then there's like Ringworld, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go buy that book, Larry Niven, and it is a great book. It's really fun.
What's the ship's name? The Lucky
It's
Bastard or something?
Yeah, it's called The Lying Bastard.
The Lying Bastard. That's
the name of the ship that they crash land on the Ringworld. So, okay, this is a really good example of world building right here. So, this is actually a constructed world, so it is a world that has been built by an alien race. And the Ringworld, okay?
Basically Halo.
Yeah, it's a ring around an entire star, and it's spinning like, once every 9 days or something to give you like 10 meters per second gravity. And I think specifically like 9.7 or something. It's like a little off from Earth, but like by 1%.
I can't remember all the hard numbers from that book.
Me neither. But I just remember specifically them being like, oh, it's not Earth gravity, and I'm just like, all right.
Okay,
I'm like,
Larry.
okay. At this point, sometimes the slightly off stuff, I'm like, all right. Either make it more off or just have it be the same. That's kind of my opinion. I'm not a huge fan of the like, oh, their day length is 24.1 hours long, and they divide it into 24 hours. I'm like, look, either do or don't. You gotta go full, right? You gotta
We're getting
we're getting chat. Okay, let's see. So we have Amy Hogan. That one hurt me.
Sorry, Amy.
Lucius Nearing. Max reads more than most people.
Yes, he also writes more than most people. But I'm also getting chat on my phone.
Oh, chat on your phone.
From the one and only Lucius Nearing. So she's telling me a story of how she almost hit a deer and a coyote and almost hit Snow White on the road. But her main comment is, "Damn, Max is all worked up." And he is.
I am.
Because he just went to the Kennedy.
I just went to the
Space Center.
I have my Dragon capsule hat, SpaceX. I have my Occupy Mars shirt, and I have my sweater. This is my new sweater. I love sweaters. I have a Falcon 9 sweater, so it's fun. I enjoyed going.
There's a SpaceX launch.
Yeah, there's a rocket launch tomorrow. It was supposed to be on Saturday, then weather delayed it, and so then it was supposed to be today. But then they had like a valve malfunction, so they had to delay it again. And that just happens. But I think tomorrow I'm probably gonna watch it live because they have a live stream, and I might do like a watch along if I can figure it out. But yeah, so definitely SpaceX merch. It's so fun. I'm so glad I finally have SpaceX merch.
Yeah.
So Ringworld. So this alien society has built this massive structure, and it has the surface area of like millions of Earths or something like that. Just its height it's as tall as like 100 Earth circumferences or something like that, and radius is immense. Like they barely so what happens is you have this crew of 4. You have this guy who just turned 200 years old because they have booster spice, which is their immortality serum, pretty much, right? And so this guy's like, he's 200 and he's like, I'm bored. And then you've got this rare alien who, he comes from this species of aliens that they're all supposed to be cowards. But he is like the one that's like slightly less cowardly. But he is still very...
but slightly less cowardly dog.
He is still extremely like cowardly compared to humans, but he's like slightly less. So he's like, hey, boy do I have a mission for you. And so he's like, okay, I'm bored, might as well. And you're like some crazy rare alien thing, so you're probably gonna give me like an interesting adventure, like an interesting story to tell. So then they go and they recruit pretty much it's like this species of alien that I'm not sure how close they are supposed to look to tigers, but they're described as like anthropomorphic tigers, pretty much. They're tigers. They're not technically tigers. It's one of those things, they're called the Xin, right? And so they're just these like killing machines. And Larry Niven actually, he didn't write all of them, but he had this
Larry
series.
Niven actually killed someone.
No, he has this series of books called the Man-Xin Wars, because humanity and the Xin like fought each other for a long time because the Xin are very I mean, they're tigers. Like, what do you expect?
Tigers.
So then the last person they recruit is someone who is genetically lucky, which is an interesting thing in this book.
Yeah.
It's revealed later on in the book that the elusive, like the coward aliens, they have been like breeding different species for like different traits. So the Xin, the Xin are pretty useful, but they are too bloodthirsty. So they've kind of like watered them down over the years. And so like this species is pretty smart, but we can make them smarter. And so then they're like, what do we do with humans? They had no idea. So they're like, let's just make them lucky. So they made humans lucky by having like they pretty much, Earth has like I think it's like a 2-child policy or something, and you have like a lottery system to like get you can have more kids. And so they looked for someone that was like the 6th generation of like being lucky to like have been born. And so they are supposedly like someone with immense luck.
Yeah,
like genetically.
Stan Lee, creator of Spider-Man and a lot of other Marvel characters, said that he believes that the most powerful superpower to have would be the power of luck. So
that's interesting.
Take that to heart.
Yeah.
So
this they find this like she's like 18 years old and she's lucky, and you know it's kind of questionable what goes on because you've got she's like kind of like the romantic interest, but she's like she's like 20 or something, and the guy's like 200 years old, so it's kind of like sketchy, but that's not a major part of it.
What happens on Ringworld stays in Ringworld.
So what ends up happening is they the elusive rare aliens, the cowardly aliens, are like, hey, we see this thing and it looks scary and we don't want to investigate it because we're all cowards, so we're gonna send you guys to do it. And then they're like, okay. And so then they go and they are like, oh, this is cool. And then their orbital trajectory ends up intersecting with the ring, just like, as they like do an orbital burn. And so the orbital ring, the Ringworld, sorry, it pretty much is like, oh, this is an asteroid, it's about to crash into the Ringworld, laser, and so it like fries them, and it causes them to crash into the Ringworld. Not very well designed. And so they crash land, and they're like, well, we're stuck here now. And so then they're stuck there, and so they're like, let's try and get off. So they're like, okay, well, this is a pretty interesting thing. Maybe there's people here, and maybe they're advanced people, because, they would have to be pretty advanced to build this. But over the course of the story, they find out that they've all, like, reverted, like, they've all lost their technology, and they're all, like, no longer a really advanced society. And eventually they do get off the Ringworld because there's basically this giant mountain, and the mountain is really just a place where a giant asteroid, like, punched through. So they go to the top of the mountain, and then just, like, fall into space. And then they're all good, and they fly away. But it is such a cool world-building thing, because you have basically these shades in orbit to, like, cover the sun for a nighttime period, and then, uncover it for a daytime period. Because the Ringworld, every point on its surface is facing directly towards the sun. So without those shades, it would just be daytime all the time, which is not fun.
I think that'd be fun.
You think that would be fun?
I like the daytime.
You want to go to Barrow, Alaska in summer?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because it's such a novel concept, just the Ringworld. When this was written, it was like, it's so cool. It's immense, and it's just great storytelling. And I haven't yet read it, just like, again, so many things to read. But I do want to like read some of the Manxin Ward books, because I'm like, yeah, these are cool. I like these characters. The tiger character is pretty fun. He's just like bloodshed. He's just like there, and he's like, yeah, he's a pretty cool character. So yeah, so that's Ringworld. It's pretty good.
I read it way long ago.
Yeah.
So, and that was when I was like voracious reader. I think I read Ringworld right before I read another one of my favorite books, which is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Great book. I gotta say, like it outfoxed Ringworld
Outfoxed.
for me.
Yeah.
Also, outfoxed is one of my favorite words because it's like it's the qualitative measure. You have more foxes than the other person, or is it that you are more of a fox, or is it that you can think more like a fox? Or I don't know, but I like foxes being a unit of measure.
General, they've outfoxed us 2-1.
Never tell me the odds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ringworld is fun. It's an example of like world building where instead of going with a planet, you're going with a mega structure, and that is just so fun. Because they also have they have this. I don't actually know how to pronounce it because it's a rosette, right? But in the book, they like call it like a Klemperer rosette or something. Like that's like not the way to pronounce it. It's like they spelled it incorrectly. I don't know why. It's like Kemplerer, and then they called it Klemperer, like rosette. I just don't know. It's just made it completely confusing. But it's basically 5 planets that are just spinning around each other, and their center of gravity just flying through space. And that's what the cowardly aliens live on, because they're like, they're a planet. They don't like, since they're cowards, they're like, we are not going to set foot off of our planet. It's too dangerous. And so there's so many people, well not people, but aliens on their planet that they just cannot deal with sunlight anymore, or else they would overheat. So they just they pack up, take 4 farming worlds with them, and just yeet out into the galaxy. So yeah, so
That's Ringworld.
that's Ringworld. Pretty fun.
So
Yeah. All right, I would recommend to read all of these books that we're
No,
going
yeah,
to.
definitely.
You should read them. Okay.
Red
Mars.
This is also.
This is a fun.
And we also have chat on my phone.
Oh, okay.
Lucia, you can just type it in the YouTube chat.
Yeah.
She says, "This kid makes me smile. 10 out of 10 max. 10
Thank
out
you.
of 10. And y'all are such nerds. It's so funny. Welcome to the Gravity Max."
Yeah. Well.
Tell us about Red Mars.
Yeah. So Red Mars. Okay. It is the first in a trilogy of books. There's Red Mars, Green Mars, and get this, Blue Mars. Yeah. So.
I'd be scared there.
Yeah, exactly. So it's Kim Stanley Robinson, and these are great books. They are also long books. I remember Ringworld was like a shorter book, probably like, what, 200 to 300 pages, I would say.
For Ringworld?
Yeah.
I would say so.
Yeah, and so then Red Mars is like 600 pages. Not as long as Dune, but yeah. So Red Mars is, I think, the first book. I don't know, because I've read the first and I'm like 80% of the way through the second book, so I don't know exactly where Red Mars stops and Green Mars begins, but I think it starts in 2028 or 2024, and it ends in 2061. So it starts 2024 and goes to 2061, and that's what, a span of like 37 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's a lot of time, and it starts with, in 2024, the first chapters follow the people on their 9-month voyage from Earth to Mars. And this is interesting because this book was written in like the late 90s. And currently we have a 2024 plan for Mars. So with SpaceX.
Mars.
Yeah, so we currently have a plan for Mars for 2024. And so in this book it starts with this plan for Mars. They've selected like the world's best astronauts. And they're like 100 people, and they're like going to Mars, and it's so cool. There's so much like politics. Like there's this character Phyllis, right?
Yeah.
And Phyllis is just like the antagonist. And the thing about Phyllis is that I cannot like imagine her character as anyone other than Phyllis from The Office. That's who I imagine
They're
whenever
complete
I'm
opposites of each other.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Phyllis from The Office and Phyllis from The
Yeah, Phyllis is like nice in The Office, but then so there's like these politics forms because there's like Anne Claiborne, one of the characters.
Yeah.
She is like, we should preserve Mars and the geography, and then you've got Sax Russell, who's like, no, it's garbage. It's just it's a wasteland. We got to make it habitable. So it's terraformation versus non-terraformation. That's one group. But in Green Mars, they all come together because they are trying to become independent, and so that is above all. So Red Mars, you start with this first group of 100 inhabitants. They start, building things. They start to set up little small, slight terraformation projects, and they build a city called Underhill. And so you start getting all these, you get all this construction. So then the second city on Mars, which isn't really, it's not talked about much as it's happening, but it's referenced later, Sabishi. So it's called Sabishi. And it's basically, instead of an international effort, it was Japan's bid at colonizing Mars. So they have this Sabishi city. And so then slowly more groups start immigrating to Mars, and you just get this development, and you can see it go from an uninhabited barren planet to a major place where a lot of people live. And it's really cool. And then by 2061, tensions rise and there's war.
Tensions?
This is tension, right? This is tension.
ASL for tensions.
This is ASL for tensions. Because tensions. So tensions arise, and then, stuff goes down and it's not good. So, yeah, it's a really fun book. I love it. And, yeah, so you've got these leader characters, out of the first 100, you have, John Boone, Frank Chalmers, you've got Maya Twitovna, Sadie, don't remember her last name. I remember this character.
I'm at
pretty
a
well,
loss.
actually. Then there's, what else? Yeah, but they're all fun characters. They build a space station on Phobos, and then at some point in Red Mars, an asteroid swings by Mars, so they capture it and they turn it into a space elevator, which makes it easy to get onto Mars. And so that's just great. Then in the second book, you have this new character, Arthur, don't know his last name.
Not C. Clarke.
Not C. Clarke, yeah. He's 51 years old, and he's working for this company called Praxis, and he's supposed to be a spy for Praxis of the Martian underground groups, and it's just so rich. There's just so much world building. And so he comes, and then they capture him, and they're you're a spy, and he's and they're we're gonna take you into our custody. You've seen too much. And he's okay, because he wants to be in this group. So yeah, so there's a lot of the main antagonists are they're called the transnational companies. There's 12 of them or something like that, and they're all just they're out for money, and so they're we want Mars for money.
Yeah, I read I read Red Mars and a little into the next one a while ago.
Yeah.
But we've chat as well.
Oh yeah, cool. Okay, so chat. We have quite a bit of chat. Okay, so Jam McCarthy, 1975 says Red, Mars, and then an emoticon. And then Yui Films says the bus is yellow. What? What's that mean?
I don't know.
Okay, the bus is yellow. Then Jim McCarthy, 1975, says you are yellow. And then he says Carrot Farm. Am I right? I would
think
not
we're talking
know.
about Minecraft with that Carrot Farm.
Oh, okay.
Brendan
Carrot
is
Farm.
known to be scummy on Minecraft Worlds. I'm calling you out.
Oh, wow.
You cause tensions in
Tensions.
the Minecraft world,
Yep.
and you will be stopped. You've been
All right.
vilified by this community, and your heretical doings shall not go unpunished.
Yeah, so then Yui Films says, bruh. And then he says, you can't say that. Jim McCarthy says, I have the right to. Yui Films says, kinda messed up. Jim McCarthy says, no you. And he also says, I will not be denied my rights. So we've got some tensions in the chat. And, oh yeah, that's interesting.
And I got some chat on my phone.
Oh, yeah.
Lucia's gonna keep texting me, but she has texted me a picture of the coconut crab. I think that's what they're called. I can't remember if that's what they are, but they are these massive crabs. And I want to give a shout out to her because I absolutely love these coconut crab things, and I love how they're massive, and I love how if I saw one, I would immediately die. It takes the edge off because at any given point in my life, I can just be sitting there having a bad day, and I'm like, hey, at least there isn't a coconut crab on my ceiling.
That is true.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, but yeah, Red Mars is such a rich world building. I say for world building, they get like A+, because so then you've got this character Hiroko, and she's like this like spiritual like new agey like, and she's like I am one with the Mars and the Ariophany, and so then they go off, and as the companies at some point like in 2061 they're like, yeah, we're sick of this first 100, they're just more trouble than they're worth. Like, they have major political power. Why do they have major political power? It's not like they're the first 100 people on Mars and deserve political power. So they try to kill them all, and so they have to hide underground, and Hiroko is like, hey, let me help you out. I have this city in the southern Martian ice cap, like we've melted out a little like dome and it's completely hidden. And so she's like, yeah. So then they have that space, and that's where Green Mars starts. Like, and it's where Red Mars ends and Green Mars starts. Then you've got this guy Arcady. Arcady is like this revolutionary firebrand, but then he dies in the first book.
Gets lit on fire.
Yeah, so he's like the firebrand. Like, he dies because they. Like, the company, they hack the colony, and they're like, let's make the oxygen content 40% in here, and then, like, let's light a match, and then, everything goes kablooey. And so, yeah, really good book. I would highly recommend to read. That's what I'm currently working through. I'm working through Green Mars and then Blue Mars. So, yeah, I'm also reading 11/22/63.
So before we switch, we got more chat.
Oh, we got more chat.
This is the most chat we've ever gotten.
We have, Jan McCarthy. Whoa, he called you out on Minecraft. What you gonna do? Yui Film says, calling me out. Jan McCarthy says, yes. Yui Film says, I'm going to drop a diss track on you because of that. Jan McCarthy says, do it. I dare ya. Yui Film says, Saturday, 12. Sebastian diss track.
Yeah,
now, is that midnight or noon?
Probably.
Who knows? Yeah. Jan McCarthy says, I'm waiting. I have major political power. Yui Films, Jam, join VC. Voice chat, Jam McCarthy. Okay. Yui Films for like 2 minutes. I wonder what they're discussing.
Yeah, no, they're discussing my diss track. That Yui Films, you should check out his channel.
Yeah.
His link is in
No, because he's not the
but
guest. So
he's featured.
only guests get link privileges.
He's featured on this channel. I also want to shout out Lucia again for reminding me of the fact that coconut crabs are responsible for eating the corpse of Amelia Earhart. I love these things. I love these things. They're so great, and they're the great limiter of life. They are the right hand of nature. They are death incarnate.
They are the one thing like holding us back. Society without crabs. That one stock. Yeah. So yeah, that's Green Mars. Do you have anything else on it? Or Red Mars?
Yeah. Well,
that's the Mars trilogy.
Mars trilogy. I would feel like out of the ones that we've discussed, this is the one most similar to Truly Dead Rock because it takes place on an already existing celestial body, and it talks about like the technology that would be built to survive the climate there, how that affects people, and how they how like the historical events have gone, and like thoughts of like independence and like all of that stuff.
Yeah. Okay. We've got more chat, and then I'm gonna change the slide. Okay.
This is the most chat we've ever gotten.
Thank
you all. This is great.
We have Jam McCarthy. Yeah, thanks for being on chat. We really love to talk to you guys. If you have any like questions for us, like we can answer questions. So yeah, okay. So we have Jam McCarthy. It wasn't 2 minutes. Yui Films, sure, but spelled S-H-U-R. I think he's trying to say shut, like shut up. But asterisk. He's okay. So Jam McCarthy, and we were discussing the diss track. Yui Films says apostrophe shut, and then. Or asterisk. And then Yui Film says, the diss track is done.
Yeah.
Jam McCarthy says, Fruit Loops are better than Cocoa Crisps. Yui Film says, Video 2. Missing Music says, how dare you? Jam McCarthy says, I dared. Missing Music says...
This is... Okay, yeah. So we live in a time of a lot of tensions.
A lot of tensions.
But on a more serious note, there's like a lot of bad things like going on in the world at like any given time, and like the news isn't helping. But like unfortunately, the most like recent thing that is plaguing us, like the most like horrific events that have happened, are because of the debate between which cereal is the best. So Jen McCarthy has posed the resolution that Fruit Loops are better than Cocoa Crisps, and the chat is going
They're
insane.
going. Huey Films is repeating, the bus is yellow, the bus is yellow, the bus is
I
yellow.
think he might be a
Jen
sleeper
McCarthy's
agent,
just
and he's
terrifying.
trying to activate like someone else. That's like
Oh,
their
God.
activation codes.
Oh no. Huey Films, my question is, what color is the bus? Green. And change slides. Bam. A truly dead rock. It is time. A truly dead rock. Yeah.
I think there's only one person that can start talking about
Alright.
Truly Dead Rock. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
up to you.
So, we begin on the moon in the year 2102. And we begin on the North Pole of the moon in New Armstrong Colony, the first American colony on the moon. And we follow this kid. His name is Hudson Hosai. And he is living on the moon with his older brother. And he is going to high school and his brother is going to college. And they live on the moon because the moon is slightly better off than the Earth. So there is an educational program that brings people from the Earth to the moon to like have better opportunities on the moon. But it's like thinly veiled. It's also like part of this like program is that once you're out of school, you have to stay on the moon. Like you have to work on the moon for a little bit so that like as repayment for like getting better education on the moon. And this is really because these lunar colonies are the 51st, 52nd, and 53rd states of the United States. And there have been some whisperings of an independence movement. So the US is trying to like, is just doing everything it can to get Terrans, which are people from Earth, to immigrate to the moon. So they are trying to increase immigration so that they don't vote for independence, so the moon stays part of America. So it follows Hudson, and Hudson's like, it starts with the sun setting over the North Pole of the moon, because just like on the Earth, the moon has a North Pole, and just like on the Earth, the North Pole is in darkness for half the year, then in light for half the year. So the sun sets, and Hudson's like very depresso because this is the first sunset he's seen on the North Pole of the moon, and for someone who has lived on Earth, it's like, what?
Unless he lived
in the
Alaska.
North Pole, yeah. No,
Yeah.
he's from New York. He's a New Yorker.
Don't ever disrespect me like that again.
Okay. He's from New York. I thought it was probably a Boston accent.
It was neither.
It was neither.
It was in the middle of nothing.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I am pretty much a New Yorker. I'm from a town very close to New York. So it's not like if there are any offended New Yorkers, I don't care.
There's a offended New Yorker in this room.
In this room. Okay. But yeah, so he's from New York. So he's like, why is it nighttime? Like, that's not okay. But then they have streetlights, but they're kind of like not good because the streetlights are just meant to be efficient, because the New Armstrong colony, that's one of the key things that gets contrasted later in the book. The New Armstrong colony is factory-like, it's efficient, and it was the first colony that America put on the moon. And this is the reason that they put a colony on the moon was because China was saying, we're going to put a colony on the moon. And if you know anything about spaceflight, then it is that development is spurred by competition with a rival country that has a rival ideology. That's just how it goes. So so there's the second space race in the 2030s, 40s, and early 50s. And so the South Pole, the southern hemisphere of the moon is controlled by China, and the northern hemisphere is controlled by the U.S. So you have Hudson, and he's going to school, and he's just a regular kid. He's like school like fine. He has his friends and blah blah blah. But he also like feels like a bit of an outsider because he's from Earth, and a lot of these people have lived on the moon, and so he's like. He's like the noob. Because another thing is that a lot of technology on the moon is more advanced than it is on Earth, and so he's like, "What is this? Contact lenses that let you what?" And so everyone else is like, "Wow, like you don't know how to operate stuff." Okay, Zoomer, because at that point in time, people from Generation Z are like Elthem.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, so he's just going about his business, right? Everything's fine. When they decide that they are going to be independent, a vote is cast in the New Armstrong colony and in the state of New Armstrong, and the other two lunar states, Mare Land, not Maryland, Mare Land, as in the Mares on the moon, which was a joke that I made, and I'm like, I don't know if I'll keep that in. I kept it in.
You kept it in.
And on the back side of the moon, they have like the highlands.
A place called Baltimore with an O.
Yeah. So the other two states are like, if you like, the other two states have said like, yeah, we'll do independence if like you vote for it.
And that causes some conflict.
Yeah. So then they vote for independence, and all of the people at his school are like, yay, because they're from the moon, and they're like, haha, we don't want to be part of America. But he's like not so happy. So then they get hit by a strike from this colony called Cheney Bing, and it is the colony on the south pole of the moon. And it was the first of China's colonies on the moon, but it gained independence in 2054, which is what caused World War III. So they strike the North Pole of the moon with a missile and evaporate all of the ice that's there, because the North Pole of the moon and the South Pole of the moon are big exporters of ice. And if the South Pole can eliminate the competition, then they are the sole exporter of ice. They have the monopoly. And so that's what they do. So they didn't want to attack the North Pole of the moon when they were part of America, because if you attack America, you equals dead.
Why do I hear boss music?
Yeah, exactly. If you've learned anything from history, it's that if you attack America, then there's going to be some force coming back at you. So, like, yeah. But once they're independent... Oh, okay. We'll address it. Yeah. So once they're independent, they don't have ties to America anymore. America's like, oh, you wanted to be alone? Yeah, see how well that works for you. And they get attacked, and they're like, oh, no. So what happens is that Hudson is like, during this attack, they go to their airlocks, their emergency airlocks, so that they don't like depressurize, right? And so then his brother is like, he gets this spacesuit. He has two spacesuits that he got on like a lunar like excursion like tour, and they're not very good spacesuits. They're not meant to be used more than once. And so he's like, come on, Hudson, we gotta go. We gotta leave because this is like not a good situation. And so Hudson's like, okay, he just follows his brother. So he gets to one of the airlock doors of the colony, and there are other suited figures there. And he's like, what is going on? This is suspicious. And so then he opens the door, like they get in to the like hangar pretty much, and everyone takes off their spacesuits, and then he realizes that he's in the room with like two wanted terrorists and this guy that like bootlegs old computers. And so he's like, Grant, who are these people? Why have you brought me here? And so everyone's just kind of like awkward and like silent, because they're like, why? Of course he would bring his brother, because he's not just gonna leave his brother on the moon. But they're not happy about it. Like they would have preferred someone that didn't have a brother to be part of this like group. So yeah. So then they need to get from the North Pole of the moon to Kepler, which is around the equator, for their assignment. And so they're like going around, and they're like just causing chaos. Like they're stealing stuff. and they're part of this new religion called universalism, which doesn't exist yet, and it like
Yes.
well in the
He's gonna start it.
yeah no it doesn't exist in 2020 in this fictional universe, but it exists in 2102. So it is like this religious like fundamental, like it's like terrorism, and so he's like, what am I doing? And he's kind of like he's kind of like stuck like with the trip, because what else are you gonna do? Like they steal a rover and they go from colony to colony to get down to Kepler, and he's just like, I have no idea what to do, because if I were to like alert the authorities, then like they'll all be arrested, my brother will be arrested, like I'll be in for like questioning, and like it will be difficult to get back to Earth. Like that's all he wants. He just wants to get home. So that's pretty much how the story starts. I don't want to like spoil it.
Yeah.
But
I was surprised you said that much. Like,
yeah. It's
I
that's
thought-
like
I
the
thought-
first 3 chapters.
Yeah, I thought you weren't even gonna like talk about anything after China's attack on New Armstrong. But,
Yeah, but yeah, I don't want to spoil
So
it.
I'll-
But yeah, that's it.
I'm like 65% of the way into this book. So I'll give my review after we.
Okay.
I've been watching chat. It's been going
Pile up.
absolutely insane.
Oh my.
Like we have to scroll all the way up. Like
That is a lot of chat.
all the way up. So we need to
Oh
do
my
this quick.
gosh. Okay. Let's see. Okay, this is where it is. Okay.
Wait, no, I think it's more because he's repeating the same thing.
Wait, no, the bus is yellow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but he's been repeating that.
No.
There's more.
No. This is the stop. Okay.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
What color is the carrot farm? Says Jan McCarthy. Jan McCarthy says, Frowoit's loops are better. Lucius Nearing says, is this 1984? Yui Films says, the bus is yellow. Jan McCarthy says, carrot farm. The bus is Yui Films, the rock is dead. Jan McCarthy, potato farm.
They're like Bavarian like whalers at a funeral, just
Exactly.
saying the same thing.
Exactly. So then, Lucius Nearing, war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength, I guess. Very well put.
Yes.
Yui Films, The Rock is dead. Jan McCarthy, The Moon is rock. Yui Films, okay, I'ma do it. I'ma spoil the plot of a truly dead rock. Oh no, don't do it. Missing Music says, did you just make a 1984 reference? Jan McCarthy says, do it. Lucius Nearing says, I've made 3. Missing Music says, nice. Jan McCarthy says, I remember that book. Cool book. Lucius Nearing says, 2 + 2 = 5. Jan McCarthy says, that one firefighter.
No. Oh no, he didn't. He thinks it's
He
Fahrenheit
thinks Fahrenheit 451. Yeah, the
Wrong book, Jam.
that one firefighter guy, Lucius Nearing, no. Missing Music, it's a Sunday, don't bring up math. Lucius Nearing, that's Fahrenheit 451. Jan McCarthy, yes. Oh wait, yes it is. Lucius Nearing, 1984 is Winston. Missing Music says, yeah, the firefighter is from Fahrenheit 451. Lucius Nearing says, and the party. Michael McCarthy's, or Jan McCarthy says, oh,
Yeah.
he's been awesome. Jan McCarthy says, oh. Missing Music says, also a great book. Lucius Nearing says, yeah, it was amazing. Missing Music, but not 1984. Jan McCarthy says,
Have you
2
read
good books.
1984 Missing Music? Because I didn't know that you did. Because that's great.
Yes, then Lucius Nearing says, I should say double plus good. Jan McCarthy says, they got me some grades on my essays. That is true. Missing Music, Lamau. Lucius Nearing, Lamau, me too. Jan McCarthy, neither good or bad. Neither good nor bad. Jan McCarthy.
Jam is not doing. It's not Jam's day today.
Lucius Nearing, ignorance is strength, really came into play there, full. Missing Music says Fahrenheit 451 was a great time for grades. We never did 1984 in my class though. Lucius Nearing, 1984 is a good time for grades for me. Jim McCarthy, sad face. Yui Films, New Armstrong is all fake. What? No. Lucius Nearing
It's a real
says,
place.
not in math though. Yui Films says, everything is a simulation. Lucius Nearing says, BC again.
Because again.
Because again. Jim McCarthy says, B is all I know. for those books. Oh. Lucius Nearing says 2 equals 2. UE Films Robot Dog. Oh yeah, that's true.
That's Fahrenheit.
And that's in my. Oh, actually, I referenced Fahrenheit 451 at the beginning.
Oh yeah, you have people walking the robot dogs
robot
for
dogs.
no reason.
Well,
I
because
was like, why?
no, because they can't have animals in the colony.
So why are they walking a toaster around the compound?
Just because they're like, I want a dog, and then everyone's like, yes, but it's impractical in a lunar colony. And they're like, robot dog. I mean, we already have those, those whatever Zuzu pets, like those weird things. Those.
I had one when I was like 4.
Yeah. So also, I referenced Fahrenheit 4. Like they're doing a book report of Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah, they are.
In my book.
Yeah.
It's funny. I specifically, my class didn't read Fahrenheit 451, so I specifically read it just so that I could reference it in my book as their class did a book report on it. Okay, yeah. So robot dog, robot dog. Lucius Nearing 2 + 2 = 5. J. McCarthy, Pero Dog, UE Films. Hudson buys a special something at a antique shop. That is true. He buys an old computer. J. McCarthy, orangutan. That is not how that is spelled.
Yeah, that's the point.
Okay. J. McCarthy, don't. Missing music. Do you think you'll get ATDR fanfiction? Oh God.
I'm making it now!
It depends. Well, do I think I will get it? Now I do.
I'm sending it to you.
Before you asked that, I didn't particularly think about that. And I would hope it's just,
Hudson X David.
Oh God. Oh
I'm making
God. I'm just internally. No. No. Don't. Jan McCarthy, don't call me a Zoomer. UE Films Monkey spelled incorrect. Lucius Nearing, 100%. Lucius Nearing, I'll write it, throw it back to middle school. Watch me. Jan McCarthy, I am a book reader. Missing Music, co-author with me. Lucius Nearing, absolutely. Missing Music, we'll AU this thing. Lucius Nearing, yes. UE Films, Missing Music, smiley face. Jan McCarthy, scary times. UE Films, you have to post it on Wattpad though. Lucius Nearing, smiley face again. Quotev, Lamau, I don't have an account, says Missing Music. Quotev. Jan McCarthy says. Yep. Jan McCarthy says, don't they? Lucius Nearing says, 6th grade. Quotev. UE Films.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Donde está la Biblia? Okay. You take German. You can only say something in German for us, UE Films. Jan McCarthy. No, Jan McCarthy. So I'm have to tell you to stop. Lucius Nearing. Nah, it's too late. The party can't stop us. Jan McCarthy.
How much
Brendan,
more chat is there?
you're being racist, and I am a building. I have no idea.
Oh, I know. That's an
UE
inside
Films.
joke.
UE Films. No. UE Films, Hudson is going to align with no people. Okay. I don't know. Oh yeah, terrorists. UE Films, that's just like at school. Jan McCarthy, don't be racist. I am a building. Okay. Lucius Nearing, Winston loves Big Brother, and Cammy and I are writing try us. UE Films, shout out to Jam for making a weekly video and then promptly getting it blocked so we're all
Yeah! Yuri had Jam make his last video because he doesn't know how to make good videos for himself. And the video that Jam made for him got blocked in every country.
What?
Yeah.
How bad was it? Dang. Jam McCarthy, I try. Missing Music, AU. Jam McCarthy, who was SME? Because they blocked it. Lucius Nearing, this fic is gonna be wild. UE Films,
it's gotta have coconut crabs.
Jan McCarthy, Sony, wow. Missing Music, they're gonna check chat and be so confused. I am. UE Films, Sony, Sant. New company, guys, Sant. Missing Music, I'm so sorry, guys. This chaos, near Lethotep vibes, right? Getting noticed by the big boys bots. Okay. Sony.
How much
You
more
keep
is
saying
there?
Sony.
So we're at.
Lucius Nearing, so very confused.
Oh, there's too much.
Okay, I think we're gonna have to cut this right there.
Yeah.
We really appreciate chat. We'll read new messages after Jan McCarthy. They are so far back.
Yeah.
Thank you for chat.
Yeah, no, this chat's been great.
This is
the
fun.
best chat
Yeah, we
we've
don't
had.
like you guys are having a great little discussion. We don't need to read all that. But if you have questions, I don't know how you can mark it. Just be like question.
Yeah, just say
Um,
Q :
Yeah.
your question.
Yeah. So if you have a question for us, like we'll answer it.
We'll answer.
Yeah.
Maybe I
So-
should be the one to hit the space.
Sure.
I will.
Yeah. So that's
I will
Truly
take
Bedrock.
the
Buy it.
responsibility.
Ooh.
Here we go.
Ooh. Ooh, successful. Elthem, Aliens in Ohio. I love this. So let's hear it.
All right. You may be wondering, why are there aliens in Ohio? Who is Eltham? And why am I screaming at you? All these questions will be answered in the next 5 minutes. So basically, Eltham, aliens in Ohio, because I don't have a title for this, which is my universe. I don't have like a book, but I'm working and Max is helping me to take my works and put them in like novel form. What I'm going to do is I'm going to explain the universe to you as quickly as I can, and I'll tell you like the main plot and everything that's going on. I'm watching myself.
30 seconds delay.
But basically, in my universe, there are aliens, right? And there's humans who are actually pretty far along in terms of being advanced. Humans are seen as being like moderately advanced. The most advanced race is called the Tetraphant, and the Tetraphant are the ones that made first contact with humans when they touched down in Cincinnati, Ohio. And they touched down in Cincinnati, Ohio, and humans immediately did their best to show them a different city so that they wouldn't think that the entire planet was like Ohio.
I love that. He sent me a paragraph. Of,
That's the
it's great.
that's the first paragraph of the prequel for this story, because my story actually picks up kind of in the middle, like the main story that I would turn into a novel like first. But so you have the Tetraphant, humans. I talked about the A-list major and minor, who are just known as like the A-list, not the aliens, you know, just the A-list. And then you have the Brennan just sent me the diss track again.
Oh no.
And then you have the Kadakians, right? Not the Kardashians, the Kadakians. And they...
Kayakians? Kayakians?
The Kadakians are this race that, like, they're not as advanced as the other, as, like, I would say they're probably one of the least advanced, if not the least advanced society or civilization, but they have, like, technology that no one else has because it's so uber specific to Kadakia, their home planet, and they have a lot of technology that the other people don't understand, but they still act, like, in an uncivilized manner from the viewpoint of all of the other races. So, long story short, the Tetraphant meet up with humans. They're like, we can help each other. The Tetraphants say, you're the only other life that we've been able to detect. Let's work together. So humans form a coalition with the Tetraphant. There was an agreement signed saying that the Tetraphant can, basically have rights to certain land areas of the moon, and humans are allowed to set up business on Elthem. Now, what Elthem is a Euchimonopolis, which means it's a planet-wide city. It's a city covering the entire planet. The planet's name is Elthem, so the city is technically the city of Elthem, but everyone just calls it Elthem.
Yeah.
And
Elthem City.
it has a population of like around 600 to 750 billion, and I still need to work out the numbers, but it's going to be in that range. And the city doesn't cover the entire planet because that would make a city like so large that even with all these different races, they couldn't all like inhabit it. Um, it's like it covers 70%, give or take, of the planet, which is still a pretty big city considering that Eltham is like roughly the size of Mars. Um, the other part of it is really just like mountains and water. So they don't need to get their water like imported per se. They do, but they still have their own natural resources that they can use. So the Tetraphan and the humans formed that coalition. Then, using their combined power, they located the Alis Major and Minor, and by the time that they actually went into contact with them, the Alis Major and Minor didn't know that the other ones existed. So what actually ended up happening was that when they first found them, this this radicalist group went out because the Tetraphan had like travel technology. So while the coalition was like figuring out like how to approach this new species or both species, this radicalist group went out. Went out to it's called the Joxy system. They went out to the Joxy system, and they basically started a war between the two Alis. And that the radicalist group was made up of humans, so that looked bad.
Yeah, that doesn't.
That on our part, but they had a war. It was not good. The coalition ended up finding the radicalist group. We killed all of them because they were responsible for so many deaths. Because of that, we offered like pretty much unlimited aid to the Joxy system, to the Alis people. So most of them live on Eltham. There's still, I would say, like 15% of each race lives on their original like set of 3, but a majority of them live in Eltham. And Eltham is not the Tetraphan's homeworld. It was just a planet that had very easy conditions to build a massive city across because it's mostly like rock, but it does have an atmosphere similar to like Earth, Mars-ish. So that happens. The Alis join the coalition. They get aid, and for a while they just keep vibing. In Eltham, there's issues because the way it's run is basically a corporatocracy. Because corporations have gotten so big that the government basically tasks them with the entire market. It's still a free market, but essentially everyone works for a corporation or for the military. And it's those corporations can offer like an incredibly wide range of jobs. You're just working for that corporation. And then the coalition of those 3 or 4 races, depending on how you see the Alis, locate the Kadakians. And the Kadakians, like, they reach out to them, they're like, yo, what's up? Party happening on Eltham. Come join us. And the Kadakians say, nah, right? Which is really weird because the Tetraphan offer, like, all of their, like, scientific knowledge and all of that. They're all about, like, free information and all of that. So, like, they gave medicine to humans that allow us to live past 125. The human lifespan is now, like, 145, like, 150 if we're pushing it. But we offered all those things to the Kadakians, and the Kadakians were like, nah, don't come to our planet. We will smack you. Just leave us alone, right? And everyone's like, okay, I guess. And then rumors started spreading that the reason that they wanted to be left alone was because they had an incredibly powerful weapon called a Crixus. Now, a Crixus is the most powerful object in my universe. All the different races already had some predetermination of it. Like, the Tetraphan actually based their entire religion called a Genti around a Crixus. For humans, you might know a Crixus as a Philosopher's Stone, and the Alis have their own interpretation of it. So everyone was like, oh, maybe they want to be left alone because they have this Crixus and because they're gearing up to wipe all of us out. So a vote was held and we invade Kadakia, their military like smacks us because they have technology we've never seen before. It's not that they're more advanced with us, it's just that it's so unique to the planet and they're fighting on home territory that they're able to like kick everyone else's asses because they're on their own turf. So they go out, another vote is held, and basically we issue out an order to the Kadakians letting them know that we're going to crack their planet. And what that is that a planet cracker is basically a star destroyer, except it's like a massive ship and it fires like a beam, like kind of like the Death Star. It like fires a highly charged like ionized beam directly into the core of a planet, basically like destroying the structural integrity and like essentially cracking it. So the rationale behind that was if these people have a Crixus, like they need to be gone now because they're pretty hostile. And even though it was because we went in, they were hostile. You know how that goes. So
You know how that works.
what we offered to do was we will take your civilians and they will be safe on Eltham, right? So we take
It's like the U.S. wants oil, the coalition wants a Crixus.
Yeah, so it's totally synonymous
Yeah.
with the Gulf War because they think that there's powerful weapons, and they crack the planet after taking in a ton of refugees, like 80%, 85% of the Kadakians. The last like 20 to 15% were like true nationalists, like I'm going down with my ship. Planet gets cracked, you can't breathe in space, so they get wiped out. They search through the remains because it's easier to search through a cracked planet than a non-one. So they look for this Crixus, they're looking all around, they look at possible places they could have gone. Turns out they didn't have a Crixus. So, whoopsie daisy. So, we offer the same thing we did to the A-list, which is we give them free aid, basically free board in Eltham, and we basically like take care of them as much as possible. And the Tetrafant economy, the Tetrafant human economy is so good that we can actually kind of sustain them. But people are kind of racist in Eltham because they see that these Kadakians are getting basically everything handed to them. And that's how people usually are. They always look at the advantages and not the disadvantages. And like their planet is literally like Neutrogena bar, like Nature Valley, just granola bar, like just complete rubble, you know. And going into what my story, that's the universe, right? Going into what my story is, it right now it's gonna follow a half Tetrafant, half human kid because they can. The Tetrafant and humans can like mate. It's only like the Aeolus that can't mate with either. I'll come up with something. Like, if George Lucas can come up with a reason why Mace Windu has a purple lightsaber other than Sam Jackson wanted one and actually made it like kind of a big plot point, I can do that, you know. So half Tetrafant, half humans are called eclipses or like clippies, which is a slur. So like the half Tetrafant, half human boy is named Fen, and Fen like will just get called like Clippy like in the street. And the more you say it, the more it sounds like a slur, which is why I like saying it as much as possible because I invented it.
Yep.
But the it's his point of view. It's also the point of view of someone in the military because the police force of Eltham, because like a city needs a police force. It's so large because the population is so large that it doubles as their army. So to join the police force, you're just in the army, and you get like military training and stuff. But what they also do is they hire mercenaries because there's a lot of mercenaries around like in this time period. Because of the culture of the A-list, which I won't get into now, but also just because it's a viable work option for people that don't want to work for corporations. So the EDF, the Eltham Defense Force, is the police/military. They hire mercenaries, which are called lancers, which is short for freelancers, which are just mercs with good military tactics. So Damien, which might not stick around as his name, he actually like named himself because he didn't have like parents. That's a plot point. but he gets hired by the EDF, and he like works there, and it's his point of view, and it's also going to be a point of view of a Kadakian. So it's those 3 points of views that keep like shifting, and it's I can't really give away what the antagonist / issue is without like being a spoiler, but there's like some sketchy stuff going on that all 3 characters notice. So it's not even in alpha stage. It's not even in like PTR stage. It's
an idea.
It's an idea.
Well, you see now it's coded into the YouTube.
Yeah, it is.
So that's the first step. Because when something's just an idea, like.
All right, so we have got so much
questions.
chat.
Let's just check if there's a question. I think it's just people talking to each other. So.
Okay. There's so.
Here, wait. Yeah, anything that's addressed to Gravity Max, which is highlighted in red, that's what we'll read. Okay. Anything that contains Gravity Max, we will read that. So if you want something, say Gravity Max, blah. Okay. So here, let's just read through.
Confused. Yep. Chill guys, they're reading.
Okay, here, I got it. Okay. So, riding the coattails of Gravity.
Oh, come on!
Said Yui Films. Yui Films repeats riding the coattails of Gravity Max.
Yeah, it's the first line in his.
Yui Films, then he just says Gravity Max. Gravity Max.
McCarthy says
128 seconds to rails. Okay, Gravity Max, we need you to ban Sebastian. No.
Says, why does he want me gone? Why does he want me gone?
I don't know.
Okay. Hold on. So, Jim McCarthy says, so Connecticut, Rhode Island, Delaware, Maryland, and West Virginia should not be states?
Okay.
What?
This is so... We gotta, like, read this afterwards.
This is insane,
oh my
yeah.
gosh.
I heard Norway is prime for the taking. I'll be real here. He's been talking for way more than 128 seconds. I want him gone. Ban him. Banned. We need you to ban Sebastian real quick. Hit him with a bonk. Kick him out. Give him the shape of Italy. A truly lively rock. There's more than one type of crab on the moon. Link! I never knew my real ladder.
Nice. Yeah.
I only knew my step ladder. Sebastian, your plane is outside. You appear to need help. Sebastian, go home. Max, go to bed. Please go to bed. And Michael ends it off with saying, your plane is here.
It's 7:30. Why
I don't know. Alright, let's... so, any comments on that?
I really like it. Really promising. And I can't wait for it to, like, become a fully fledged work that we can plug in the plug section and say, get ready for November or whatever.
Aliens in Ohio.
Aliens in Ohio. So, I think, so yeah, any questions, again, just address it to Gravity Max. Just say, Gravity Max, : what do you think about Ohio?
Yeah, so...
Solutions, lukewarm.
From now on, because we're getting so much chat, write Q : something, or just write...
No, write Gravity Max, because that becomes highlighted in red in the chat, because it's addressed to the YouTube channel who is like hosting this. So say Gravity Max, and then we will read your comment. Otherwise, have your lively discussions. Should I change slides? Yeah. Okay.
Earth. Trash!
Worst world building, super lazy. Okay,
It's garbage. It's garbage,
okay.
Max.
My main, I mean, we can get into this, like, specifics, the broad strokes, but, okay. It's inconsistent, full of retcon, okay? You introduce these dinosaur characters, right? And you're hyping up these dinosaur characters. You have them for hundreds of millions of years. You're like, oh, these dinosaur characters. Then you're just like, I don't want them anymore. Asteroid. Bam. What?
Lazy writing.
Lazy writing, exactly.
Right.
Earth is probably the worst example of world building I can think of. Okay, so Gravity Max, what do you think about Sebastian? Gravity Max, what do you think about world domination? So Yui Films, then Jam McCarthy. So to answer Yui Films, I am good friends with Sebastian, and I think of him favorably. Okay, And I think he's the perfect co-host for this show. Yeah, no problem. So he will not be banned. So what do I think about world domination? I think that it is impractical, infeasible, because if you declare yourself king of Earth, then there's gonna be people underneath that are like, how about no? And that's oh gosh, we've just created a film. Okay, UA Films Gravity Max is your opinion. Is your opinion what is the reverse of what? Okay,
That's not legible.
is your opinion what is the reverse of one? My opinion is not what is the reverse of one. Okay, Gravity Max, Sebastian, what do you think about Max?
What do I think about Max? Well, I've known Max since like 5th grade.
Yeah, 5th grade. Maybe
Um,
3rd grade is a word job.
yeah,
Or 4th.
I joined in 4th grade, so since 4th grade, and honestly, I would not be like writing or being like creative without him around.
Thank
So
you.
all of like, honestly, like the stuff that I'm most proud of that I do is really all like tied to Max,
Oh,
and
thanks.
it's been such an honor to be on the show and to work on so many projects. And Max is the most creative person I know,
Thanks.
which is like hard to do because he's also one of the most intelligent people I know.
Oh, wow.
And usually it's like one or the other for most
Yeah.
people. And I feel like, Max has so much potential, and I feel like honored that I'm like able to like join him with this. And like really what I want to do is I want to help him like get the like recognition and this like the cred that he like deserves, which is why I'm like totally fine doing like podcasts every week and putting out videos for like his channel and my own, but also because it's like fun.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's super fun.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very heartfelt. Yeah, thank you. It's very fun. It's such a fun, it's so fun working with you. Since 5th grade, we've been writing stories and then kind of ditching them. But I feel like that's what got me to write.
Yeah, I feel like
Like the negative zone.
yeah.
Uh,
I feel like the dynamic we have is that when two people are like together in whatever like work relationship or like friendship or anything else, it's like people often like show like different sides of themselves depending on whatever task they need to accomplish. And I think that like you and I work together so well because
Yeah.
we bring out the best in each other. Like
yeah,
I get
agree.
twice as funny, like
Huh.
easily when
Yeah.
I'm around you, and
It's
it's
pretty funny.
thank you. And it's like comedy just comes so naturally when I'm like around you, and so do like story ideas because it's always like I would say the number one thing keeping me from like writing books like you do and like creating like channels or like making all that stuff would have been like doubting myself kind of like being like, oh well, that idea doesn't really work as well as this one, and that one's already like taken, so why go with that idea? But when I'm working with you, it's like that idea is absolutely fine, and the fact that it's like our original idea makes it better than that idea.
Yeah.
So that's how like this like work relationship like had affected me personally, but you think I bring out the best?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, and we're working on this TV show, this fictional screenplay, and we finished we've done our first draft, and we've gone back and now we're going through the second draft, and it's really exciting. I think it's going to be a great show, whatever it becomes. Probably just for YouTube purposes, it'll probably just be voiceover at most.
Yeah.
Because we do not have an animation team to make 30 minutes of animation, but yeah. So thank you for that answer to that question. So okay, next question. Gravity Max. So Jan McCarthy, Gravity Max, we have questions.
We're answering them.
Gravity Max, what is lazy? It's when you don't want to work. I mean, just go to Miriam. Jan McCarthy, gotta do the Gravity Max. Please demonstrate. Send us a video response. UV Films, Gravity Max. UV Films, Gravity Max. Do you know your ladder? I do not.
I only know my step ladder.
What? I only know my former. Gravity Max. What does ladder mean? Again, Merriam-Webster. They have this. They're really, really great service. Gravity Max. What do you think about the Middle East crisis intertwining with the coronavirus, as well as the idea of Ohio getting blown up?
I think I can answer this.
Okay, take it. Yeah.
I made a video on the coronavirus. You should check it out. It's on my channel, 100 Reactions. It's a space. So, the Middle East crisis. When you say the Middle East crisis, you kind of need to be more specific because the Middle East as a whole is a crisis. So, and in it, there's the Syrian crisis, and then there's the Saudi Arabian crisis, and then we just had the Iran crisis where I thought I was gonna get drafted. So, lots of crises.
Yeah.
So, be specific. Intertwining with the coronavirus. Well, that the coronavirus is obviously in Wuhan, China, and all of the deaths, save 3 people, have been in China, in mainland China. So I don't really see it becoming an issue with the Middle East. But what you might be alluding to is that there is Middle Eastern coronavirus, because you got to remember coronavirus is just a blanket term for it's like a different strain of pneumonia is the best way to think about it. So there's SARS or SARS, which has been going around the Middle East. There's Middle Eastern coronavirus, which has been going around the Middle East. So overall, I don't think it's going to impact the Middle Eastern crises that much, because they've already been dealing with these diseases, and a cure, or at least a highly effective treatment, is expected soon, coming out of China, and because global health efforts are focused on the cure and all of that. Concerning Ohio getting blown up, I'm absolutely for, and I am ready when you are.
Wow. Okay. So, UV Films, Gravity Max, Cthulhu.
That's a reference to my Discord.
Yeah, it says, Gravity Max is 0 factorial 1 or 0. It is 1. It is 1. 0 factorial is 1. According to the scientific community, go into Desmos graphing calculator and type in factorial x, y equals factorial x. Okay. Oh, so then that's it. Those are all the questions. So yeah. Back to Earth though.
Daikaiju for I just
Oh.
him out.
Oh yeah, he's here.
I don't think he said anything else.
I am the coronavirus.
I am the coronavirus. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Great to see all these familiar faces on the live stream.
Worn out places.
Yeah. I'm glad that everyone showed up. It's really fun to have a live episode like this. I hope we can have one per season at least. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so
Aliens doesn't count.
yeah, Aliens. That was a little rough. It
hurt in here.
Yeah. Well, anyways, it was fun. So
should I hit space on the next one?
Yeah. This is just a joke slide of haha, Earth, bad
Earth
world building.
suck.
Yeah, not very good at.
Final thoughts.
Oh, okay. I could turn off the webcam at this point because right now the final thoughts slide probably doesn't look so hot.
Okay, let's leave the final thoughts on, or the Earth thing on.
Okay. Just that it doesn't look like garbage.
Yeah.
Actually, here, wait. I can go into ops and.
All right.
I shall just turn off our friend window capture. He has ceased. Now I'm going to expand this. There we go. So, let's see how that ends up.
I want to see how the final thoughts looked. Oh yeah, it was just behind.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, yeah. So great to have a live episode like this. Definitely one per season. I mean, our next season is April, May, June, and so I'll be out of school. And I'll be up in the northern base of operations. So we will definitely have some more live episodes, live episodes for you in the future. And yeah, it was really fun to talk about world building. World building is a topic that I really like, just, as an author, both of us as writers. And so, yeah, it's really fun to work on world building. And it's fun to be here with my co-host, Sebastian.
It's fun to be here with my co-host and friend, Gravity Max.
Yep. So, yeah.
I think this is my favorite episode that we've done.
Yeah.
I think, because this is kind of everything that our, at least the Gravity Max channel is about. It's about analysis of other things. It's about our creative writing, and it's about the science behind both of those things. And I think that us being able to put that all into one video, and us having the most active chat,
very active chat,
and I think the highest viewer count while it was live, in Gravity Max history
probably.
as of now. That really added to it. So I want to thank the chat.
Yeah, thank you all for being
so
here
active.
All of our friends.
That was so great. That if you, some of you, I think, sat here and watched the entire thing.
Yeah.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
That's
thanks for that.
I'm gonna buy you.
hours.
I'm gonna buy you something. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll bring you back something.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. It was really fun. We hope you join us next week. Well, it won't be webcam live, but we will have a guest. A new guest, which is always fun. We're trying to bring in some new people. Of course, we do have our old reliable. We'll have them come back every once in a while. It's always a fun time. So Jan McCarthy says, Gravity Max, what's it like looking into a camera for 3 hours? It's fun. It is really fun to be on and to present. And yeah, I like presenting. So it's pretty fun. And I love just it's topics that I really enjoy talking about. World building, science, sci-fi, the future, what it's going to be like. That's what I love talking about. And I feel like in everyday conversation, there's not enough talk about the future and uplifting things. It's always just news and negativity.
Look at the top thing. Look at the top thing.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Oh.
The fanfics are coming.
Oh gosh.
There's nothing we can do to stop them.
Again, thank you for watching.
Yeah, thank you for being there.
And thank you for being here, my co-host. And I will probably be live tomorrow just watching the SpaceX live stream launch. So you can do a watch along or whatever. Tension. That's my default hand gesture. I don't know.
My default hand gesture is that to that.
Yeah, mine is. It's like the Bernie Sanders like the hand motions as well as tensions now. So so it's been fun. Yeah.
It was definitely my favorite episode so far.
Yeah. So we'll see you tomorrow if you're gonna watch the watch along. I just definitely, and if you can't watch it, you should watch it back. The SpaceX launches. It is so cool. So that's it. If you're not gonna watch the SpaceX launch, then see you next week on Sunday. That's it. That's it. Cool.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah, thanks for watching. Now the stream shall be ending. Okay. Thank you all for watching, and see you all next